We all ready to go, Jennifer? All right, very good. Everybody ready? Here we go. Well, good evening, everybody. It is Tuesday, December 5th, 2023, 7:01 p.m., and this is the meeting of the Edina City Council this 5th day of December 2023. We are doing these meetings in a hybrid fashion, as Director Benarott indicated. Some people may be watching us on cable TV. They can participate in the meetings by calling in, and we're going to talk about that momentarily. Some may be watching on their computers or, on edinamn.gov live meetings or Facebook. They're going to be able to participate tonight in a couple of different ways. On a remote basis, and that is during community comment, where we'll take comments from members of the public on matters that are not before us this evening or scheduled for a future public hearing. And then we're going to have a couple of public hearings as well that people can participate in, both in chambers and remotely. So having provided that information, and let's get that phone number up on the screen real quick, because community comment comes up fairly quickly. So there's that number, folks, if you're watching. This is going to come up fairly early on the agenda, 786-496-5601. Conference PIN number, put that PIN number in, press star 1 to speak to an operator. The operator will bring you into Director Benarott, and Director Benarott will bring you into the council to speak to us and tell us what's on your mind. So, having provided that information, let's call the meeting to order, and I'm going to ask for a roll call. Please, Director Benarott's handling that tonight. Our clerk is absent.
Councilmember Agnew.
Here.
Councilmember Pierce.
Here.
Councilmember Jackson.
Here.
Councilmember Risser.
Here.
Mayor Hovland.
Here. Next is the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, everyone. And we have a form of meeting agenda that's been published pursuant to the legal requirements. Is there anyone on staff or on the council wishes to modify the agenda in any form or fashion? Is there a motion to approve the meeting agenda as published?
So moved.
Member Jackson moves.
Second.
Member Risser seconds the adoption of the agenda for the meeting this evening. Any further discussion? All those in favor of adopting the meeting agenda for this evening's meeting say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Carried. Now we're back at community comment. As is our practice, our city manager will answer questions that came up in community comment from our prior meeting. And we may or may not be able to answer questions that come up this evening. Generally, the staff requires a little bit of time to do some research on some of these issues. So nonetheless, we'll start out first with folks in the audience that wish to address the council on any matter of concern to them that's not otherwise on the agenda this evening or scheduled for a future public hearing. Is there anyone who wishes to address the council? Yes, sir. Good evening.
I do. Good evening. Mayor and members of the council. Ronnie Anderson, 5728 Kimrich Drive. I'm here tonight to address a topic which is on the minds of many in our town and certainly on yours. That topic is the escalating level of serious crime, including 2 homicides in less than 2 weeks and an armed robbery attempt of a postal service vehicle. Yesterday's pursuit of a stolen vehicle ending in the arrest of the car thieves was made possible due to an electronic license plate reader. That's great equipment. Nice job. I want to be absolutely clear that my comments are not in any way a criticism of our police force, which has performed admirably. I believe them to be among the best, if not the best force in the metro with great leadership. The challenge we face, that this council faces, is response to violent crime in our community. We do not want this as a discussion around town. The staff budget presentation of September 19th noted the potential addition of 4 patrol officers, a mental health response officer, and a neighborhood engagement officer. I trust that will be the case. That's a good start. Thank you for that. Still, as you know, the population of Edina has increased by 15% in 10 years. Given a 54 officer force, that would require a minimum of 8 additional patrol officers to simply keep up with population growth, perhaps more, noting the turbulence of our times. We know that law enforcement visibility and presence is a crime deterrent, and that much of our population increase has come or is adjacent to the Southdale District with more in the queue. I'll repeat a suggestion that I've made in the past. Our new fire station number 2 will soon mean vacation of our existing number 2 on York, and would be an excellent location for a police substation, a cop shop, if you will. This would provide greater visibility, quicker response, efficient patrol capability, and is located in proximity to current areas of concern. With a very necessary expanded force, this would stand as a visible commitment to keeping our town safe for our residents. I know that you understand that the highest responsibility for elected or appointed officials is public safety. We are not Minneapolis, and we cannot allow normalization of higher levels of crime. A strong statement from council, combined with expansion of our ability to ward off crime in our community, is called for. Now, thank you for your opportunity to address you tonight, and as always, thank you for your service to the city of Edina.
Thank you, Mr. Anderson. And your comments are timely. We're going to be addressing this issue in just a few minutes, so stick around. Anyone else in the audience wish to address the council on a matter of concern to them? Okay. Let's go to the virtual world and see Director Bennerout. Do we have anybody waiting to speak to the council?
I do. Operator, will you please unmute the line of our first caller? And caller, please begin by stating your full name and address for the record. Go ahead, caller.
Go ahead, caller. Hello. You're on with the council.
Andy Brown. Yep. Hello, Andy Brown, 5512 Park Place in Edina. They just let me on the line with the operator. My question is, as an Edina resident, I pay for an assessing department at Hennepin County, which other cities use. Yet the city of Edina has its own assessing department of approximately 6 or 7 FTEs. And I would like to understand why it is a priority of this city manager to have duplicative services when we are short police officers in a time of high crime where we've had 2 murders. If this city council wants to be aggressive and bold and protect the residents, why are we paying for assessors that we already have at Hennepin County? And why aren't those FTEs and that budget being transferred to the police department and immediate hires being done? I would also like to understand why we continue to fully staff the Edina City liquor stores when we could use some of that money in overtime to the Edina Police Department, given what's happened. I find the values of what's going on to be very, very disturbing, especially as I'm trying to raise a 6-year-old in this community, and my family has been in this community for almost 40 years. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Brown.
I have no other callers.
All right. Do you want us to hold on a moment to see if anybody? Okay, very good. All right, let's go to Manager Neal to respond to the comments and public concerns that were expressed 2 weeks ago. Manager Neal.
Thank you, Your Honor. We had 2 participants at community comment on November 21st. The first was Janie Weston, and Janie talked to us about an ongoing issue, the concern that she has around an electric utility and its proximity to a new building being built. My understanding today, talking to our team, is that that issue is going to be remedied by putting the power underground. Developers, builders always have the opportunity to do that. They have to pay for it. It's not cheap, but I think that's their best and only option at this stage to keep their safety setbacks where they want them. And that's a decision that they make with Xcel Energy in a bilateral way. We don't participate in that discussion as a city. Second was Mr. Ralph Zickert, and he had a number of concerns around our utility rate structure and charges. We are having, frankly, a difficult time trying to recreate the math around his concerns. When I say we, I mean the finance director and the utility billing staff. We gave the council a quick look at how we do this in the work session that was immediately prior to tonight's council meeting. We're going to talk about this a little bit more, but really the big concern that we have around our utility rate structure is that it hasn't been in place for a year, so we don't really know what its fiscal impacts are or what its impacts are on behavior around water consumption. Our pledge was that when we had a year's worth of data, we would take a look at that again. We'd sit down with council, we'd review it to see if it's accomplishing the goals that we had, and maybe we do need to change it up at that point. And so that's what we're looking forward to, is the completion of 1 year of data collection, and we'll be back talking about this in 2024.
All right. Very good. Is that the extent of the comments from the prior meeting?
It is.
Okay, good. So Ron Anderson, our former colleague on the city council, raised an issue in his remarks about addressing serious crime in Edina. So I'm in year 19 as the mayor. And during that time, I think there's been one homicide in 2007, and I think it was domestic related, if my memory serves me right. And now we've had 2 in 2 weeks. We had people from St. Paul at a restaurant in Edina that got into an altercation in the parking lot, and one person killed the other. And you're going to see charging documents on that fairly soon, I think, from the county. And they happen to be having I don't know if it was a company dinner or a holiday-related dinner, but we'll learn more about the facts as we go along. The other situation was a man from Richfield at a bus stop outside of our liquor store and Cub Food on York. A man from Richfield killed by a person from St. Paul in Edina, in our community. He was stabbed to death. Very strange circumstance, and I've had significant correspondence with that victim's family, and one of the family members, his sister, happens to be one of the editors of the Star Tribune. And I sent a note to her on behalf of all of us in our community, expressing our dismay and comments on the tragic loss of her brother, Christian Lundegaard. And they've been just really wonderful in their responses, and I'd say quite understanding of what might be the mental health challenges around the person that was the perpetrator, which I thought was quite unusual and quite, at least on the face of it initially, quite a deep sense of understanding of the troubles that are out there for people. But regardless, having 2 homicides in 2 weeks, even though we've got these anomalous sort of situations, I think people in our town want to know they're safe. When we had this incident of an attempted carjacking a few years ago at the Lunds Barley's parking lot down at 50th and France, we talked immediately about what our police department was doing. Some of you have seen just in the paper this week, I think, the uptick in violent crime amongst juveniles that we're trying to deal with on a countywide basis, primarily emanating out of Minneapolis, but it does have the seeping effect into the suburbs. Nonetheless, we don't want it here. I mean, we don't want people to feel like they're unsafe or at risk. And so we're working hard to make sure that we keep our community as safe as possible. You heard Mr. Anderson say, and this is part of our budgetary discussion, we're proposing adding 4 police officers, a mental health worker, and a neighborhood ombudsman to the police force for 2024. So we're going to build out the protections that we need to keep our people safe and increase our patrols. And I think tonight what would be important is for me to go first to Manager Neal and then to our Chief of Police, who has some comments to make around this particular situation that, at least in our opinion, I think we feel is very unusual and very strange for our community to have experienced this. Because as I mentioned before, in the years I've been doing this, we've only had one issue like this in our community. So Manager Neal.
Thank you, Your Honor. I think one of the issues that we struggle with when it comes to community events like the couple that you've been talking about is how quickly it hits social media and gets into the kind of the lifeblood of the community. We find that challenging from an official standpoint because we're not able to be as quick, right? We have to make sure that the information that we are providing is, first of all, is it public information or not? Second, is it accurate or not? Those are two very key factors for us, and sometimes it takes time to establish both of those factors. So that's a little bit about the struggle that we have on the communication side. From the operations side, I think I'll ask the Chief, Todd Milburn, to talk us through what it means when we have an event like this, and what it means in the department, and how we're working with the community on this subject.
Thank you, Scott. Chief Milburn with the Police Department. Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Council. I'd just like to start out and say that our thoughts and prayers are to the family and the friends of the two recent homicide victims. This is a very difficult time for them, and we want to do everything that we can to support them and maintain the integrity of these criminal cases as we work through the criminal justice process. These two homicides are anomalies. The locations where they occurred are not problem properties. There's no history of significant repeat law enforcement calls to these areas. And there was nothing to suggest ahead of time that these crimes are going to occur in these areas. Those involved were residents, or were not residents, they were visiting. Edina is a very safe place to live, work, and visit. A quick review of our role and how we responded to these events. When the call aired, our officers and paramedics responded as quickly as possible. Our average response times to both of these events were 2 minutes. That is from the time of the original 911 call is placed, and 2 minutes is a remarkable response time in public safety. Officers and paramedics arrived on scene and did an excellent job of working through the preliminary investigation. We made some internal changes recently to have a minimum of 1 sergeant on our patrol shifts at all times. We had 2 that night, or the most recent homicide, we had 2 on duty. This is key in terms of providing leadership on scene to help with logistics and management of scenes. These can be complex investigations. Edina Police takes the lead role in criminal investigations such as this. We are well positioned to handle these types of crimes. We are also assisted by many other nearby law enforcement agencies. Hennepin County Crime Lab assists us with the scene processing as well. And we work closely with the Hennepin County Attorney's Office as we seek prosecution in these types of cases. Both cases led to quick arrests. Our officers, detectives, and clerical staff have been working extensive hours over the last few weeks to ensure our cases are comprehensive and ready for prosecution. Both suspects are being held in Hennepin County Detention Facility that's located in downtown Minneapolis. One suspect has been charged with second-degree murder. The second suspect in the second case is awaiting formal charges. A decision from the Hennepin County Attorney's Office to charge the second suspect is expected tomorrow. Well, what are we doing in response to crime? So a few examples. We've had great success in solving our most high-profile events within the last few years. All of those have led to arrests and charges. We have very talented staff who know how to get the job done. Crime trends, patterns, and locations change. Our patrol work is intelligence-led. That means we study the trends and patterns through the work of our crime analyst and allocate our resources to where the needs are. Within the last year, Southdale Mall experienced an uptick in crime. We met with management and talked about ways we can improve security. We came to an agreement to station 2 officers out of the Southdale Mall area, and that's effective January 1st of next year. Auto theft remains a high priority. We continue to see a high level of stolen autos throughout the metro area. Those in stolen autos frequently commit other more serious crimes. We've seen that true here in Edina. In response, and within the last month, we have purchased and placed license plate readers throughout the city. That is already paying off with the recovery of several stolen vehicles, several arrests, and the recovery of 2 firearms. We plan to add more of this technology in 2024. We're asking for more officers, as you're fully aware, in our budget proposal for 2024 and 2025. This will allow us to meet the growing demands that we are seeing in law enforcement. One example of that is a response to the mental health calls that we're seeing. Mental health calls continue to increase. At times, they're connected to crime. That's one reason why we're asking for additional detectives, a detective as part of the 6, to supplement our future alternative response team. This team will be comprised of a social worker, community paramedic, and at times this new detective to respond to the growing concerns around those in need of help or those that may be capable of committing future crimes. As I stated earlier, Edina is a very safe place to live, work, and visit. Our police department is staffed with very talented people who care about our community. We're going to be there for people when they need us most, and that's not going to change. So with that, I'll stand for any questions.
Thank you. Questions for the chief at all from council members? Okay. Just a reminder for folks, the response time you mentioned was 2 minutes in each circumstance, and we got the perpetrators in both circumstances, and we feel good about that part of it. Despite the fact that we think these are anomalies, doesn't cause us to lower our level of vigilance and lower our level of commitment to public safety. Just to give you a little bit of a timeline on the Ichiban, well, I'll call the Ichiban homicide. The call came in to 911 at 9 o'clock at night. The chief called our city manager at 9:40 after they had after the officers had been to the scene and arrested the perpetrator. And then 11 minutes later, the city manager texted me about the event, and then there was a press release at 10:44 that evening. So I feel like our city staff and our police department are right on top of these matters. There's a lot of things that we don't even get to know as council members or mayor because these are active ongoing investigations, and you can't compromise an active ongoing investigation. So though they know many more facts than I know or my fellow council members know, they're just not going to share them with us because they don't want to compromise the case in any way. So nonetheless, all of you should know, and in the general public in Edina, that we're doing everything we can to keep people as safe as possible. And we expect that we will continue to be a very, very safe place to live and do business and come and visit. So I think, anything else?
Nothing else from me.
Okay. All right, on that issue. All right, very good. So thanks, folks, for your patience while we talked about that important issue a little bit. And I expect that we'll have a little bit more knowledge tomorrow about the Ichiban homicide, and we'll be able to provide that information once in a little bit more detail once the charging documents come out from Hennepin County with regard to that matter. Okay, let's move on then in the agenda to the consent agenda. We have one item that Member Risser wanted to pull there, and item P. C2? C, okay. Member Risser wanted to pull for discussion item C, setting fees, and item P has to deal with a matter that when we sat as the HRA, she had voted against approval. The rest of us had voted for it, and it's on the consent agenda, and I think she wants to make sure that her voice is properly heard and her vote is properly reflected at both the council and the HRA. So does anybody wish to pull any other matters off the consent agenda other than Member Risser's request to pull items 6C and 6P for discussion? All right. With the exception of items 6P and 6C, is there a motion to approve the balance of the items on the consent agenda?
So moved.
Member
Second.
Jackson moves. Member Risser seconds the adoption of the items on the consent agenda with the exception of items 6C and P. Any further discussion? All those in favor of adoption of the motion as stated, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. Let's then go back to item 6C, which is an ordinance amendment. Every year we set fees for the coming year, and Member Risser has a question or comment regarding 6C with respect to the ordinance that would set the fees for 2024. Member Risser.
My concerns, and we did talk about setting the water fees, and the idea we will revisit those after we have a year of data, and so I think that's a really important thing to acknowledge. The other item that caught my eye was the organics and the fees for that, and I understand that this is part of the RFP that expires in 2026, but I'm wondering if we could have a review of the costs and the revenue stream going into this program, because my understanding is only 30% of the people who are paying for the organics are actually using it. And so we've got this 60%, and I'd like a little bit more clarity on that. Also, because we're 2 years out, if we could explore ways to make this program more successful and possibly explore residents being able to share an organics recycling container to limit the amount of stops that have to be made. So I wanted to get that out there to staff.
All right, very good. So would you, having provided that information, would you care to move 6C?
So moved.
All right. Member Risser moves the adoption of item 6C. Member Jackson seconds. Any further discussion? All those in favor of adoption of ordinance 2023-24, amending Chapter 2 of the City Code, setting fees for 2024, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Carried. And then we're on to 6P, which is an amendment to the 7001 France Avenue redevelopment agreement with MDI France Avenue LLC. And Manager Neal, you might want to take the setup on this, and then Member Risser we can have it moved here as an individual item.
Certainly, thank you, Your Honor. This item is a follow-up action that was meant to be the same action that you took as an HRA last week. Normally, when we have an item where a council member has voted against the item, we don't place it on the consent agenda. We failed to do that. So normally we would have placed this outside of consent, and that's what we're trying to do right now.
All right, good. So would someone who voted positively at the HRA care to move the amendment to the 7001 France Avenue redevelopment agreements with MDI France Avenue LLC?
So moved.
Second.
Member Pierce moves, Member Jackson seconds the adoption of item 6P, which is the amendment to 7001 France Avenue redevelopment agreement with MDI France Avenue LLC. Any further discussion? All those in favor of adoption of the amendment to the 7001 France Avenue redevelopment agreements with MDI France Avenue LLC, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed?
Aye.
Item carries. The amendments.
I'm against it.
Yes.
I'm used to the same.
No, I understood. It had just a Scottish note to it. I'm opposed to it. Thank you. All right. We're going to move on now to the next portion of the agenda, which is special recognitions and presentations. And this is always a nice part of the agenda, but tonight particularly so because we've got an annual award that's given by our Human Rights and Relations Commission. This is a big deal in our community, and the recipient many of us know and think so highly of, and so we're really quite pleased with the selection by the Human Rights and Relations Commission. And then we've got another person to talk about that serves us on the Minnehaha Creek Watershed District. We'll take that matter up after we get to the Tom Oy, what's called the Tom Oy Human Rights Award. And we're going to bring up Jasmine Stringer Moore, our HRRC chair, to present the Tom Oy Award to the recipient. And I'm not going to mention her name. I'm going to let you do that, and then we'll come down and I don't know if you want her up there with you right off the bat, or if you want her to come up after you do your introduction.
Gosh, you just gave it away. I was going to use this.
Well, I just got, wait, there's a lot of females back there.
I know. Well, I think she can come up since you gave it away. I'm going to stand here, and I'm going to try to use my best voice. It's really an honor. Thank you.
So for both of you, would you come and face the council, please?
Okay. Oh, sorry.
All right.
Yes.
Yeah, there you go.
Point of face the council. So I'd just like to say I did recuse myself, so I can't take that much credit because I do know you personally.
The way our camera system works, it's best if you do it this way.
Okay, perfect. So although Terry Rose would like the Anti-Racism Collective, also known as the ARC, associated with others, and not just her, and I should say this is straight from her nomination, I feel it would be fitting to honor Terry for all of the time that she has spent in creating, teaching, caring, and continuing to grow and unlearn racism. Because I know Terry personally, I'm going to add, what started as a desire to unlearn, understand, and take action has grown into a collective of over 250 Edina residents, and now we even have non-Edina residents participating in the programming of the Anti-Racism Collective. And in addition to founding what has become the Anti-Racism Collective, Dr. Terry Rose is a leading expert and world-renowned well-being advocate and child development expert with over 30 years of professional experience and a true desire to impact greater compassion and authenticity in the world and with everyone that she encounters. In 1999, remember that song? Terry opened a child development center in the heart of Minneapolis' indigenous community. So I like to say that in my community, we say this little slang saying, she's not new to it, but she's true to it. She has been highly praised for her dedication to creating solutions that remedy systemic problems impacting young children. Dr. Terry Rose is an ASHCO Fellow, Harris Fellow, a recipient of the National Child Labor Committee's Lewis Hines Award for Child Advocates. And guess what, y'all? Tonight, she is adding the City of Edina's Tom Oy Award to her esteemed list of honors. When we on the Human Rights Relations Commission think about the Tom Oy Award and Tom Oy, it's his resiliency, legacy, and commitment to human rights that we try to celebrate and honor. Terry Rose has served and led our community with respect, dignity, and a passion for cross-cultural understanding. It really is an honor to present you with this year's Tom Oy Award. Congratulations.
So I have 20 minutes, is that right? Thank you. Thank you, Jasmine. Thank you to the Human Rights and Relations Commission, Mayor Hovland, the council members, and to Tom Oy, who really embodies the social change slogan of Start Where You Live. Thank you. I accept this not as an individual, but really as a representative of all of our efforts. I hold the award as an emblem of our willingness to engage in uncomfortable conversations and learn the things that we thought were true. During the initial gathering in my driveway, just 2 weeks after George Floyd was murdered, the words of two of my neighbors really are etched in my memory. These two black men shared the same skepticism, doubting that any meaningful change would come from the worldwide outcry. As a white woman, I used and internalized these sentiments and used them as motivation to keep me engaged in the fight towards anti-racism and to encourage others to join. I thought I would do anti-racism work so that my grandchildren wouldn't need to do it. Throughout these 3.5 years of intentionally unlearning, I've come to recognize that my initial perspective, the idea that racism was a problem to be solved or a movement to be had, was deeply ingrained in my the way I had been socialized as a white woman. I now better understand that racism is the very foundation upon which in the United States our economic and structure lives. Woven into the way we do business, who lives next to us, who gets a pension, educates our children, prays next to us. All of those have deep threads to the enslavement of humans, the genocide of indigenous people, and the confiscation of land. As a person in white skin, I understand that this legacy exists in every system I'm in and every role I play. My revised goal is to set an intention every day, in every space I'm in every role I fulfill, that I intend to be an anti-racist community member, consumer, grandparent, business owner, and social activist. I recognize that the fight against racism is not a singular battle, but a united endeavor. Change will require each of us, every day, to commit ourselves to anti-racism. I sincerely thank everyone for their efforts and contribution to our overall change and well-being. Thank you. Is this my better side?
All of your sides. Couple more safety shots. Here we go. Thank you.
Those are some of the nicest remarks I think we've heard from somebody receiving this award. So congratulations again, Terry. And Jasmine, thank you for being such a great presenter and member of our community. And thanks to other folks that were here to help recognize Terry Rhodes. Really appreciate it. All right. Now, we've got Steve Sando with us, Steve's been loyally serving us on the Minnehaha Creek Watershed District Board of Managers for the past couple of years, and he's up for reappointment. And because of state law, I think we needed to do something that we don't normally need to do, and that's approve your or nominate you for reappointment and provide a support letter by way of resolution. So we both nominate you to the Creek Watershed District Board, Minnehaha Creek Watershed District Board of Managers, and also send a letter in support of your application. So thanks for being with us this evening, and you might want to take this opportunity to give us an update on the work that you've been doing on our behalf and the Watershed Districts has been doing on behalf of the overall district.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Steve Sando, 5133 Juanita.
Want to hold that microphone a little bit closer, Mr. Sando?
Mr. Mayor, City Council, I'm running for my second 3-year term for the Minnehaha Creek Watershed District Board of Managers. I'm asking for your endorsement. The MCWD oversees 178 square miles of wetlands, lakes, and creeks, and the Minnehaha Creek that flows through Edina on its way to the Mississippi River. To better describe what the MCWD does, 3 years ago, the City of Edina and the MCWD, in a collaborative effort, took Arden Park from a diamond in the rough and made it shine. Build it and they'll come. Kids and families are now enjoying the creek. It has become the focal point of Arden Park. Hundreds of new trees, bushes, and pollinators were planted, and buckthorn was removed. A new shelter and playground equipment were installed for all to enjoy. Arden Park is just one example of the improvements the MCWD does throughout the district. I try to put my action where my mouth is. I have participated in numerous buckthorn busts along with the mayor and planted trees on Arbor Day in our city. We also built a new warming house used in the summer and the winter, playground equipments, and wonderful bridges throughout the park. I try to put my action where my mouth is. As I said, I've participated in numerous buckthorn busts and the planting of the trees on Arbor Day in our city. Going forward, I want to be on the team that is dedicated to the preservation and improvement of our natural resources for current and future generations. Thank you all for your support.
Thank you, Mr. Sando. I know we first met when you got a hold of me. I went down years ago before they did the work on Arden Park, and you were doing buckthorn removal, and I ended up spending
Yes.
an unexpected few hours doing buckthorn removal with you and your wife, and it was a great experience. And it was.
Thank you for that.
Yeah,
And it drizzled, and the mayor stayed and finished out the day.
Yeah, but it was the way we had the chance to meet each other and get to know each other, whacking buckthorn together, and then on to the Arden Park, and you were so instrumental in helping give the Minnehaha Creek Watershed District the kind of guidance they needed from the neighborhood to get that park done the right way. You and many of your other neighbors that were on that committee, I think you just did a fabulous job. So it's really been a pleasure for me personally having you on the Watershed District Board of Managers. We just know that our interests are being well taken care of with you out over there on the board, looking out for our interests. Anybody have any questions for Mr. Sando or comments? Yeah, Manager Neal.
I just wanted to add a comment that during that whole Arden Park project, it wasn't always a happy project, right? It was a beautiful project when it was completed, but during the project itself, it wasn't always fun. Mr. Sando was always there as an honest observer and really an advocate for that park and an advocate for city staff and people like Ann Catry that got to know you really closely during that time. So I've never had a chance to thank you for your support because it meant a lot to us at that time.
Thank you, Scott. One more comment regarding that. I did go to all the meetings. There were naysayers there. They didn't want anything disturbed, too many trees being cut. We replaced them with hundreds more trees. And I see people in the park that I used to see at those meetings, the naysayers, and I stop them and I say, "What do you think of the park?" And they turn to me and they say, "We kind of like it." So there's your answer. Thank you, Scott, and thank you.
All right, thanks, Mr. Sando. Is there a motion to adopt Resolution 2023, 92, which would nominate Steve Sando to the Minnehaha Creek Watershed District Board of Managers?
So moved.
Second.
Member Jackson moves, Member Pierce seconds the adoption of Resolution 2023-92, which would be our nomination of Steve Sando to the Minnehaha Creek Watershed District Board of Managers. Any further discussion? All those in favor of adoption of the resolution as stated say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Carried. Thank you, Mr. Sando, for being here this evening, and we'll get that letter out on your behalf too, along with the resolution. And now we're going to the public hearing portion of the agenda. As I mentioned earlier at the beginning of the meeting, we have a couple of public hearing matters. One relates to a possible use of a site known as the old Kevin Keys automotive site on Vernon Avenue, and the other one involves our proposed budget for 2024. We'll take a public hearing, take up a public hearing on that matter here shortly. But first, we're going to do a public hearing on this, what's potentially required over at the Kevin Keys site in terms of a comprehensive plan amendment, a zoning ordinance amendment, and site plan review for what is called 6016 Vernon Avenue, also known, as I said to us, as the Kevin Keys automotive repair site. And our Community Development Director, Carrie Teague, has this matter for introduction purposes and kind of set the stage for conversation. And then we've got some folks here on behalf of the applicant that wish to speak, and then we'll turn it over to the public for any testimony they want to provide with regard to this matter. And I think Director Teague will probably recommend that this matter stay open until noon on December 11th, 2023, and we'll continue the action on this matter to our December 19, 2023 meeting. But I'll turn it now to Director Teague.
Yes, thank you, Mayor, members of the council. So this property is located straight west of City Hall on Vernon Avenue, where Highwood Drive and Olinger come together toward Vernon. As mentioned, this is the old Keys Automotive. couple of pictures of what the site looks like today. This has been in operation since the late 50s as a gas station and automobile repair. So the site is guided in our comprehensive plan for medium density residential, which would allow up to 12 units an acre. On this site, 4 units total. However, the site is zoned PCD4, Planned Commercial District. That's where our gas stations are located, car washes are allowed in that district, as well as automobile service repair. So the proposal this evening is to remodel that existing structure into a donation collection center for Green Drop. They would collect gently used clothes, shoes, and household goods, nothing over 50 pounds. They would be open from 10 a.m. to 6 p.m., 363 days a year. They would be closed Christmas and Thanksgiving. There would be up to 2 employees on the site during business hours. There would not be any outside storage, no semi-trailers parked on the site. Once a week, there would be a 16-foot box truck that would come and unload the merchandise from the facility. It would be taken off-site and sold elsewhere. So there would be no retail sales on the site. So as I mentioned, the existing building would remain. The site is mostly paved, so they would be tearing out all of that bituminous and building a new parking lot, so there'd be a reduction in the bituminous. They would plant some landscaping. A new cedar fence would go along the north lot line and west lot line. They'd remove that existing fence that's in a poor state of repair. So a lot of requests to accommodate this one. Comprehensive plan amendment from medium density residential to neighborhood service. That would establish a new land use category in the comprehensive plan. You recall there was a restaurant proposed here about a year ago, and the least activity land use category within the comprehensive plan is neighborhood node. So this would establish a new land use category that would just allow these uses, and I'll go into that in a minute. And also a zoning ordinance amendment to allow that use in the PCD4 district. Currently that use is not allowed. And if those two are approved, there would be a site plan review as well. So this is a graphic that we've seen in a number of projects, especially ones that can go either way where the council has complete discretion. This is our pyramid of discretion. So as mentioned, this is a comprehensive plan amendment and a zoning ordinance amendment. So the council has complete discretion to approve or deny this request. With that, the staff report includes an option for approval and denial. There's also resolutions to that effect in the packet as well. So to get into the detail, the comprehensive plan amendment. So this, within the comp plan, it would be a relatively simple change, just going from medium density residential to this new neighborhood service category. So this would be under the land use categories. It would allow small scale service uses, including the auto service repair and donation collection center. The existing comprehensive plan, again, medium density residential, would allow up to 12 units an acre. Under that classification, based on the size of this site, 4 units could be built there. We talked a little bit about when the restaurant was proposed, a comparison about what could be built here. And we compared it to the 4 housing units that are being built at Valley View and Wooddale. That site is about 11,000 square feet. The site that we're looking at this evening is 16,000 square feet, so a little bit larger than that site, to give you a comparison. In regard to the zoning ordinance amendment, so as I mentioned, automobile service centers, car wash, and gas stations, those are currently allowed. The text that would be proposed to support this use would be the donation collection center, but we would add conditions. And those are the conditions that I mentioned earlier. All the donations would have to be stored inside, no outside storage, 1 employee on the site at all times, limiting the hours from 10 to 6, size of the building, and no retail sales. So this would impact 11 sites within the city that are currently zoned PCD4. There are 2 in the 54th and France area. 4 in the Grandview area, the Firestone at Southdale, the Mr. Car Wash on Viking Drive, the Shell Station on 77th, and the Grandview Tire on Vernon, and on 70th in Amundsen. So just to show you quickly, this is the site we're looking at, the Keys. There are 4 within the Grandview, the 3 gas stations, and the Murphy Automotive. There are 2 at 54th and France. This is the Firestone site at Southdale, the car wash, and the Shell gas station, and the 3rd Murphy Automotive at 70th and Cahill. So to review the site plan, as I mentioned, they would be reducing impervious surface. The red hatched area, that's all the pavement on the site currently. So they would construct a new parking lot. Based on the square footage of the building, they would need 3 parking stalls. They're proposing 4. As I mentioned, the fence around the property. A parking and traffic study was done by Stantec. Ed Terhar is with us this evening, online virtually, to answer any questions that you may have in that regard. They have concluded that this previous service station or auto repair would generate 120 trips per day to the site, and the proposed green drop would generate 72 trips. So this could be a reduction in traffic compared to the uses that we've seen previously. In terms of setbacks, as I mentioned, they're using the existing building, so no change there. They're improving the setbacks for the parking lot from 0 feet on Vernon to 7, and along the north lot line from 0 to 6 feet. So primary issues. Is the comprehensive plan amendment reasonable, and is the zoning ordinance amendment reasonable? So as I mentioned, again, the city has complete discretion. Staff recommended to the Planning Commission approval of this request. However, it's due primarily to the fact that the site has been zoned for auto-oriented uses for 50-plus years. This use could be considered less intensive than those automotive uses. We kind of saw it as a temporary solution for what the best use is for this site. Given the surrounding land uses in the area, medium-density residential may be the most appropriate land use given the small size of this site, and it has been that has been the comp plan designation since 1980, and it's carried forward since that time. However, the Planning Commission recommendation is for denial on all 3. They did not feel that the use is appropriate for the site. They generally like the use, but not at this site. And we talked about the previous designation of the comprehensive plan. They did make one point that I think was a really good one, and that is that if this is a temporary use of the site, the solution and what's required here is a permanent solution. We're amending the comprehensive plan and the zoning ordinance. So that really focused their discussion and was one of the big reasons for the denial. So with that, as the mayor mentioned, we're suggesting that the public hearing be closed on December 11th and that action be continued to December 19th. I can stand for any questions, and the applicant is here for a presentation as well.
Thank you, Director Teague, for that presentation. Questions for Director Teague at this point in time? All right, we'll start with Member Risser at the end, and then we'll go to Member Jackson.
Could you go back to the last slide that you just showed? And here, variances would be required to get 4 residential units on the site, true?
Most likely, given the required street setbacks on the north lot line and along Vernon in the triangular shape of the property, so variances would be likely.
Okay. And I'm thinking about that property that you cited, the one on Valley View. You can see half of that project going up right now, and the garages are so close to the street. Thinking about where this property is located and the fact that it's on a county road, I do have concerns about if it were to become 4 residential units, what that would actually do in terms of traffic flow. You know, you have people having to stop, open their garage door before they can even turn onto the site. And that seems like that could be a significant safety concern.
yeah, variances were needed for that project as well. There may be a little more room on this site, but certainly something to take into account should it go to residential in the future.
Councilmember Jackson.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. So one of the questions I have is you're limiting the time of operation in the conditions. Would that also limit the time that the trucks could come pick up? Is that within that scope, or would we want to add that as another condition?
We could add that as another condition. Yeah, it's
Okay.
not clear in the ordinance, so
Yeah.
that would be certainly a reasonable
And
condition.
maybe, I don't know if 6 o'clock is, but when we looked at Interlochen Country Club, we limited the time the trucks could go up and down Waterman. So something comparable to that, I think, just what the expectation is for a neighborhood.
Yep, that's probably a good idea.
Okay, so I'd like to add that. The other question I have is, you said this was a temporary use. Is that for the applicant, or do you want to expound on that a little bit? Because I could see this being there for 20 years and being a good business.
It is possible. I believe their lease terms are generally in the 5 to 10 years with the possibility of extending. I guess I was thinking more the lifespan of that building. They're just remodeling what's there. It's probably not going to last 20, 30 more years. So that's where I was thinking more of a temporary use, but within that 10 to 20 year time frame.
So there's nothing within the zoning or anything that talks about it being temporary. It's just sort of the functionality of it.
Right, and to the point of the Planning Commission, what we're doing here, the request, it's a permanent. We can always amend the comprehensive plan, but we're needing to amend the comprehensive plan and the zoning ordinance in order to accommodate it. So moving forward, it would be a permitted use.
Okay, good, thank you.
Just, sorry.
Yeah, Member Pierce, go
Thank
ahead.
you, Mr. Mayor.
Segue on that one, I think.
Just to clarify, though, my understanding from watching the Planning Commission meeting, it's a 5-year lease, and at the end of the 5 years, there's an option to renew. And so when they talked about interim, I think the Commissioner Smith kind of teed up that what we're really doing is trying to decide if we approve something now while we figure out as a city what we want to do within that node over the next 5 years, or do we deny and do nothing until we then figure out what we want to do, and then the land kind of sits and continues into disrepair. And so it's a 5-year lease, the way I understood it, and then Green Drop has an option at the end of the 5th year if they want to renew.
For an additional 3 years. I think they've got 2 options to renew.
Yeah.
So they might be able to renew a total up to 11, maybe.
Yeah, that's where I think the 10 to 11 came from. Any follow-up? I have another question. Oh,
Sure, go ahead.
So I've got a bunch of comments, but I won't make them. I'll just ask the question I have. When on a previous slide, you talked about impact with PCD4, and you listed the businesses that would be impacted. And I just want to clarify, you go forward. Yeah, right there. I just want to clarify what you mean by impact. What we're doing is taking a zone that exists, PCD4, and we're amending it to add this particular service or use. And so by adding that, any business that is zoned under PCD4 now also has that as a potential option as well.
That's right.
Right, okay.
Yep, exactly.
I just wanted to clarify that was the case.
Okay. I have no questions either, and Councilmember Agnew has no questions at this point in time. Okay, you've talked to the applicant. I see Mr. D is here and some other folks are with him. So we'll ask them to come up and give us a presentation, and then we'll open it up for public testimony. I see some of our fellow residents are here and may wish to testify.
Mayor Hovland, members of the council, thank you for the opportunity to present to you this evening. I appreciate it very much. I have two other guests with me this evening, Mr. Josh Vertoshnik, the Director of Operations and Deputy Adjutant of the Disabled American Veterans of Minnesota is here. He is our not-for-profit partner in this endeavor. And Crystal Enquist, our supply chain specialist from Savers. As many of you may know, Green Drop is a wholly owned business of the Savers thrift store chain. We have 9 Savers thrift stores here in the Minneapolis, Minnesota area. I'd like to tell you a little bit about Green Drop. Green Drop is an exciting business model that provides local residents with an easy way to conveniently and safely donate unwanted clothing and household items to the disabled American veterans, providing a significant community impact, including the environmental benefit of keeping these items out of landfills and providing relief to the public waste management programs in Edina. Green Drop has been in business since 2012 and now has more than 60 locations in several states. We are a for-profit company that collects donations of used clothing, books, and household items on behalf of the disabled American veterans of Minnesota and other non-for-profit partner organizations. We pay our partners, the disabled American veterans and others, for all of the items that we collect on their behalf, providing them with unrestricted revenue that allows them to carry on their important community missions. Green Drop has entered into a lease for the former Keys Garage building at 6016 Vernon Avenue South in Edina, which would bring numerous community benefits to Edina. I wanted to mention real quick that our lease is for 5 years, has been discussed. However, there are options, but the landlord has to agree to those. That is not an irrevocable option. The landlord has to agree to extend the lease. The landlord also has a termination right after 3 years. Within 30 days' notice, the landlord can terminate our lease at any time. So that this is up to the landlord to allow us to continue to do business. We commit to responsibly managing, maintaining, and staffing the facility. Our well-trained team members would accept donations of clothing and household items on behalf of the disabled American veterans at this location. We have done this at a number of other former gas stations and dry cleaners with much success throughout the United States. I would mention it's our intention to hire disabled American veterans to staff the facility. We would offer the jobs to DAV disabled American veterans first. The Keys Garage business closed in October of 2021. The property has been vacant since then. The property was in a state of disrepair due to deferred maintenance at the time it closed, and it continues to be in a state of disrepair and is decaying at this time. Green Drop and the landlord have proposed to renovate and remodel the building and the site. This includes a new roof, new windows, exterior facade repairs and painting, new exterior lighting, new fencing, and a new reduced-size parking lot and new landscaping. Under the current zoning for the site, a gas station could open immediately. Instead of that, or of the property remaining vacant and continuing to decay, the improved Green Drop location would offer residents a convenient way to keep their unwanted, reusable items out of the landfill while benefiting Green Drop's not-for-profit partner, the disabled American veterans. The City of Edina Community Development Planning staff has conducted a thorough review of the Green Drop redevelopment and business plan, including a traffic study conducted by a third-party engineering firm. The City of Edina Development and Planning staff recommended approval of the comprehensive plan amendment, zoning ordinance, and site plan submitted by Green Drop, subject to the findings of their report. Despite the city's planning staff's endorsement of the Green Drop proposal on November 14, 2023, the City of Edina Planning Committee voted against it. At the public hearing, the Planning Commission stated that it would prefer to wait for a multifamily residential proposal for the site, despite the fact that the site is not zoned for residential use at this time. Given the numerous community and environmental benefits associated with the proposed Green Drop service in Edina, we strongly and respectfully urge the City Council to follow the city's development and planning staff's recommendation for approval. At this time, if it's okay with you, I'd like to have Josh Vertoshnik speak about the partnership with the DAV.
Yes, certainly.
Thanks, Ron.
Mr. Vertoshnik,
Mr. Mayor,
welcome.
Say again?
Welcome.
Oh, thank you. Mr. Mayor, members of the council. Again, my name is Joshua Vertoshnik. I'm here to represent the DAV in Minnesota, give a little bit of commentary about our relationship with Savers in this new location. So I'm going to try to make it brief. I could be up here talking for a while. So first things first, the DAV, for those of you that don't know, is very, very similar to the American Legion of the VFW. We are a congressionally chartered veteran service organization, membership-based organization. We've got 32 chapters in the state of Minnesota, about 19,000 members. Our headquarters is over in Kentucky, and we've got about 1.4 million members nationally, I believe, now. So the relationship between Savers and the DAV of Minnesota, once upon a time we ran and operated our own thrift stores back in the early 2000s. The leadership at the time decided that instead of getting into the retail side and everything that's involved in that, to be an aggregate collector and wholesaler of the secondhand items. The reason we do that is because our National Constitution and bylaws requires us, if we want to solicit monetary donations, it has to be direct personal contact of members and friends of members. So acquiring the secondhand items is I guess an easier way for us to get revenue. So we've been in partnership with the Savers since about 2007. We are, as of 2019, the featured charity at all 10 of their stores here in Minnesota at their community donation center. This location here will be similar to a community donation center without the retail side. And that's how it benefits the DAV in the long run. We get about 70% of our revenue from our collections and what is delivered to the stores to provide our no-cost services, benefits and services to veterans throughout the state. So that's just kind of a quick overview of the DAV, who we are, what we do, and why we're interested in this effort. I'd be willing to answer any questions if you have any.
All right, thank you, Mr. Vertonsek. Let me ask if anybody has any questions for you at this point in time. Yeah, I don't think so. Thanks for being here this evening.
Absolutely. Two real quick things. Ron did invite me to talk to the residents there at the facility where that is. It seemed to me like most of them were really concerned about whatever happens there and how that impacts their property value. That seemed to be the overall outcome of that meeting. The planning meeting, I was there for that one as well. The 4-story residential, like the council member said over there, that seemed to be quite the construction project right there in that corner, and I'm not sure if you did ask the residents, I'm not sure how big of a fan they'd be, but thank you.
Very good, thank you. Mr. D, yes, please come back up.
I just wanted to add one more thing. Back in June, when we entered negotiations to lease this property from the current landowners, I met with Mr. Teague to ask him what the process would be. He did mention to me that there had been quite a lot of residential feedback regarding the previous proposed restaurant, and he recommended that I meet with the neighbors prior to making an application. At that time, he gave me a list of all the addresses within 1,000 feet of the property, and I sent out 172 FedEx letters inviting people to a neighborhood information meeting the last week of June this past year. It was on a Monday night. We rented a room at the community center, the Senior Citizen Center, and we had about 30 people show up at that meeting out of 172 invitations. Many of the people at the meeting supported the project, and the next day, in fact, called Mr. Teague's office and said, we support this project versus the restaurant project. So I just wanted to bring that to your attention. The final thing I'll say is the president and chief operating officer of Savers and Green Drop happens to live here in Edina with his family. He's been here for 30 years, for 13 years, and his 3 children go to school here in Edina. The only reason I bring that up is I would not want to be the manager of this facility, as it will be the most scrutinized Green Drop facility in the United States as a result of him living about a half a mile from the property. So if there's any concern about us operating a great operation here, I could just let you know that he's going to be watching over it every day.
All right, Mr. D, before you depart, would you give us your business address for the record?
Oh, sure. We have a corporate office at 11400 Southeast 6th Street in Bellevue, Washington.
All right.
That's our corporate office for Savers.
Very good. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. That prompt any questions from any council members? Mr. D? Councilmember Jackson, hold on.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yes.
You can just go to the side podium, too. You don't need a microphone.
Thank you so much.
So one of the questions that I've gotten from neighbors is the backup of cars on donation day. Can you tell us a little bit about what your experience is at the other Savers stores, the drop-off sites, and what is should be our expectation for how many cars would back up on a regular day?
So as I mentioned, Green Drop has been in business since 2012. We have 63 locations open today, and we've done extensive traffic studies on the existing locations. We get about 3 to 4 cars per hour. That's a normal location for us. We get 1 car every 15 to 20 minutes. At the Planning Commission meeting, some of the residents said that they've been to other donation centers here in the region, and they often see a line of cars. Our donors don't get out of the vehicle. They pull up parallel to the building. We greet them at their car. They roll down the window. We say hello. We often know them because they're repeat donors. They pop open the trunk or the hatch. We take a bag or a box out of the car, and they drive away. They're usually there for a couple of minutes, maybe. It'd be very, very rare for us to have 2 or 3 cars lined up because we move people through the project and, through the site in a couple of minutes. They're usually not there. They don't park. They don't get out of the car. And again, our experience since 2012 is we get about 3 or 4 cars per hour. We're not lighting people up on the road. For whatever reason, if this was an anomaly and that would happen, we would put more employees on the site to move people through the parking lot faster and not allow any traffic to back up on the road. I think Mr. Teague's third-party traffic consulting firm would agree that 3 to 4 cars per hour is the average for this type of facility.
Terrific. Thank you.
Anybody else for Mr. D? Oh, yeah. Member Risser.
Just to follow up on the concern about backup, when I heard examples of sites where there was backup, it struck me that these were facilities like the Goodwill or Art Value Village that are located in commercial areas where people tend to be, the drop-off times are much more limited, and those are sites where people can actually get out and go shop in those areas. And I'm wondering if that is another reason why, what we've seen at places like that might not happen at this site.
Yeah, I think if we were located near, this is Crystal Enquist, our supply chain specialty manager, and I think she can explain that better than I can.
All right. Would you go ahead and give us your full name and address, please?
Crystal Enquist. Address 1806 Pleasant Street, Lauderdale, Minnesota, 55113. I was just going to add that typically something like a Goodwill or even a Savers store that takes community donations, generally the store is running, the retail side, right? They have a lot of other stuff happening in the store. And so the first place, if they're short-staffed, that they pull people from is generally the donation area that might happen. And so with a facility like this, the only thing they're doing is taking donations. There's going to be no reason that they're busy doing something else because that's all it's going to be doing. So I think they'll be even faster than, say, going to a donation center that's located within a store.
Very good. Thank you. Does that prompt any other questions from council members? Okay. Thanks, folks. All right. This is a public hearing matter. I'm going to open it up for testimony from the public, either with us this evening in chambers or online. So if you care to testify regarding this matter, please come forward. You'll have 3 minutes. Give us your name and address, and you'll get a 30-second warning light with a yellow light telling you you need to be thinking about wrapping up your comments. And welcome back.
Thank you. My name is Jasmine Brett Stringer Moore, 6108 Sherman Circle. I really enjoyed the presentation. I'd like to say that it's interesting that the CEO lives in the community and he's not here tonight. I think his absence speaks volume. And I have donated to ARC and Goodwill on several occasions, and I will say all of the times that I have been at the locations that are close to our community, there's always a long line, and usually, because I do go in after I drop off my items and they come to the car and pick it up the same way the gentleman explained that their situation would take place, that there are less people in the store than in line. And so that traffic of donations far outweighs the amount of people shopping in the retail areas. I don't think that this green drop donation will positively benefit the community. I specifically live within 2 blocks of that location. It's not adding a substantial amount of jobs or significant revenue to the city of Edina. Additionally, do we have a guarantee that all employees of the Green Drop location will be disabled veterans in this tight labor market? And then when we think about the unnecessary traffic, that Green Drop will add 363 days a year on a heavily residential community and on a road that is already over-congested during the stated or proposed business hours. And then finally, we have heard about the increased crime in our city. I think where there's increased traffic, there's always the potential and the relationship for increased crime. And I shouldn't have said finally. My final mark is that the closest Savor store is over 11 miles away from this donation site. So I don't think they're being very green in their setting up of a donation when you think about 22 miles round trip to pick up donations and return. Thank you so much. I'm against this, if you can't tell.
I agree with what she said. Mayor and council people, nice to see you all. This seems very familiar to me.
Make sure you give us your name and address, please.
Oh, I'm sorry. I shouldn't have presumed everybody knew who I was. Pam Allen, and 6105 Eden Prairie Road in Edina, just about half a block from where this site is. This seems to me a lot like it's the same song in a different verse. And my understanding is that this lot is already zoned for medium-density residential. I could be wrong on that, since 1980. So my question is, why do we need to go through the process of a comprehensive plan amendment? Why do we have to develop a new neighborhood service designation just to meet the needs of a commercial enterprise that does not fit into the neighborhood and may or may not succeed? And if it doesn't succeed, all we've actually accomplished is kicking it down the road for 5 years to get a final determination on what to do with this lot. And then you've got it open to commercial property, and anything can happen after that. So Vernon Avenue was originally a route for 169 at the time that it was, and that was legitimate for a gas station to go in there at that time. But the times have changed for the area. Vernon is no longer a highway. Families have developed the area into a residential community. To say that this proposal is less offensive than the idea of a restaurant is not a good argument for approval. Both ideas are bad ideas for this particular lot. In the words of the staff report on page 7, medium-density residential may be the best long-term use of the property. Isn't it time to end this recurring debate and establish once and for all that this property needs to be designated only for medium-density residential? Thank you very much for your consideration.
Thank you, Ms. Allen.
You're very welcome.
Good evening.
Mary Melander, 6105 Eden Prairie Road, Unit 35 in Edina. I would just like to see the Kevin Keys site property reverted to residential.
Could we get a little more volume on this microphone?
I'm sorry.
Director Benner? No, it's not your fault. I think it's just, yeah.
Do you want me to start over?
No, that's good. Yes, please start over.
Okay.
Mary Melander, we
Mary
know that.
Melander,
Eden Prairie Road.
6105 Eden Prairie Road. I would like to see the Kevin Keys property revert to residential. A developer could have access from Eden Prairie Road, not Vernon, and that would eliminate the traffic on Vernon Avenue. So again, garages could be facing Eden Prairie Road versus the busy street. A townhouses or a fourplex would be an addition to our residential neighborhood, and I think all the neighbors would appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Melander. Good evening.
Hi, Mr. Mayor, council members. Kurt Lang, 5301 Mirror Lakes Drive. Sorry, I feel a little underdressed, but I rushed over here from Edina High School basketball games to be here. I'm here in support of the Sabres project. I hold the company in high regard, and especially the president and COO, so him not being here is absolutely not a reflection. He is one of the most stand-up guys in our neighborhood, and I know myself and neighbors who are here would tell you the same thing. So there's a high degree of trust, the fact that we know the president, we know the company, we don't want to continue to see this site fall into further disrepair. Not making a decision, which sounds like some of the proposals here, and to just continue to let the project or let no project go there is also a decision. It's deciding that just sitting, letting this property fall into further disrepair is better than doing something with the property temporarily to make it usable and useful and support our veterans. So I think this is an excellent opportunity for even a short to medium term project to make something good happen. Thank you.
Good. Yeah, thanks, Mr. Lang. Good evening.
Good evening, Mayor, Council members. John Wellborn, 6008 Eden Prairie Road, 67 feet from the property in question. I'm not speaking against Green Drop. I'm not opposing Green Drop going in. Okay, what I am opposing is a lot of the commentary that we've heard tonight about the disrepair of Kevin Keys. And I want it to be very clear, and Manager Neal and Mr. Teague both are aware of this. The disrepair of this property occurred after Mr. Keys sold it. The owner of the property has an obligation to take care of this property right now, today, and it is not happening. Okay? You all have talked at length, going back multiple meetings, and I can quote from several of you on the dais about your feelings on changing the comprehensive plan, and that it is important, it is high level, it requires a great deal of thought. This very much feels like it's, well, let's do this so that it's not ugly. Let's appease this so that we can put something in there. That is not your job. That is the developer's job. We don't count noses, to your quote many, many times. So as you make your decision and you look at this, follow the plan. Look back at the history. I don't want to have to come here every year and it's yet another thing trying to go in there that's not what it should be. If it's Green Drop, fine. But are you really going to go through that full process and change the comprehensive plan? I believe you said a promise made is a promise kept when it comes to the comprehensive plan. Those are your words, not mine. So let's look at that as we go through this. Again, on the record, I'm not against Green Drop. I am against the way it's being taken care of right now, and I do think you should stick to the plan. Thank you.
Thanks, Mr. Wellborn. Anyone else wish to testify? Yes, sir. Come on up.
Mayor Hovland, council members, my name is Joe Burke. I live at 5816 Ayrshire Boulevard in the Highlands neighborhood, which is about probably a couple thousand feet from this site. I grew up in Edina, raised our family in Edina, and we used to have our cars serviced at Kevin Keys, so pretty familiar with that area. I support this use as the Green Drop facility. I think it's great to utilize it for something other than an empty building that it is today. I supported the use of a restaurant at the site and sent my comments to you for that. Unfortunately, that was not approved. I think it sounds like it has low traffic impact. I'm a big supporter of the reuse economy, where they are taking products that often get thrown away and putting them to beneficial use. So I also support job creation. I know it's not a ton of jobs, but a job is a job. maybe if a disabled American veteran didn't take it, maybe a high school student might be interested in it. So very interested in that. I know the president of the company personally. He's at a board meeting out in Washington, so that's why he couldn't be here. Thank you.
Thanks, Mr. Burke. Thanks for being here. Anyone else in the audience who wish to testify? You'll be able to submit a written comment too, I think, until we get to midweek next week. Let's see. They're recommending that we close the public hearing at noon on December 11th, so keep that in mind as well. If some of you feel more comfortable making a written submission in favor or against. And then let's turn now to the virtual world. Nobody holding to testify. I mean, the disappointment on your face is just so obvious. And it's just, I mean, you were just giddy when you had somebody on there for public comment, and now you're just down in the dumper. All right. Thank you for that testimony, both applicant and neighbors of ours and live in our town that have a view of this one way or another. With respect to the council, did anyone on the council wish to follow up with any questions for staff or any of the other witnesses, including the applicant? If not, is there a motion to close the public hearing on this matter at noon on December 11, 2023, and continue the action to the December 19, 2023 City Council meeting for action?
So moved.
Second.
All right, Member Agnew moves, Member Pierce seconds. The motion is stated to close the public hearing on this matter at noon on December 11, 2023, and continue it for action at the December 19, 2023 City Council meeting. Any further discussion? All those in favor of adoption of the motion as stated, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Carried. Very good. Thanks, folks, for being with us this evening. And we will next go to the final public hearing matter of the evening, and that is something we've been working on for quite a while this year, off and on all year long, it seems like, is a potential setting of the 2024 tax levy and adoption of an operating budget for the coming year. And both our city manager, Scott Neal, and Alicia McAndrews, our finance director, are with us on this matter. They'll make a presentation, and then we're going to have public testimony opportunity. And again, I think there'll be a discussion about whether to act on this matter tonight or hold it open for public hearing purposes until noon on December 11 and continue it to the December 19, 2023 council meeting. So, Manager Neal.
Thank you, Your Honor, members of council. We had the opportunity tonight during our work session to brief you on this presentation. We've made some changes to it since that time, and so we'll show you a revised presentation tonight in tonight's public hearing. There are cities all over the state of Minnesota tonight that are having a similar kind of public hearing. This is an important part of municipal budgeting in the state of Minnesota. This is the opportunity for councils to engage with the public over public spending. This is the most important, in my view, the most important policy document that councils approve every year. And so that's what we're here to do tonight. Our agenda for tonight is to show you a little bit about the budget timeline and process, show you where we are in that process. We'll talk about the budget work plan, which is a biennial work plan, and so is our budget and our tax levy as well. We'll talk about community impact on the investments that we're making. We'll talk a little bit about market value and tax impact, not just on our budget, but we'll also show you some of the tax impact and market values of our neighboring cities. Next steps, which take us from tonight to December 19th, and we'll be happy to take any questions and discussion tonight.
Thanks, Manager Neal.
This is the timeline that we started with our budget process this year. Remember, this is a biennial budget process that we engage in odd years. We look at our operating budget for the upcoming 2 years. In even-numbered years, we look at our 6-year capital improvement plan. So next year, we will spend most of our time thinking about capital spending. which parks do we want to develop, what street projects do we want to do, what building projects do we want to do, et cetera. But in these years, in odd-numbered years, we spend most of our time talking, in fact, almost all of our time talking about operating issues throughout our various budgets and operations. We talked about that just a second ago. First of all, when we think about a budget document, it is an operating document, it's a policy document, and that policy document is driven by a couple of other planning documents. The first one is Vision Edina, and Vision Edina was a future-oriented process that the city engaged in 2014. It was kind of a prep process to the comprehensive plan process that was operated in the next year or so, and that's what the other comprehensive plan that's part of the Vision Edina, and so is our capital improvement plan. All of those documents feed into our budget work plan and our operating budget. Our 2024-2025 budget work plan, this is where we take a look at the big picture items that the council talks about during the year that we want to make sure drive our spending decisions. So when we talk about budget pillars and we talk about goals, strong foundation, reliable service, livable city, better together, we will try to build our work plan items under those 4 goals. And our budget values also inform our goals, right? We have stewardship, equity, health, and sustainability are our 4 budget values. When we think about our spending and our investments, we always think about it in these 4 terms. Our budget work plan for 24-25, our strong foundation part of our budget work plan, is where we talk about physical improvements to the community, projects, building projects, parks projects, and a couple of the top projects that we're talking about are improvements to the community amenities, Fred Richards Park and Braemar Park and Arena. We recently had received authorization from our voters to spend really quite a large amount of money on improvements to these park projects, and we intend to do that as part of our budget work plan in the upcoming 2 years. Almost $50 million at Braemar Park and Arena, and almost $18 million around the Fred Richards Park. Later tonight, we'll talk a little bit about the Art Center facility and how that's going to hopefully be integrated with a new library on York Avenue. And then we have some additional around our additional projects, infrastructure projects around Cahill Sanitary Sewer, York Sanitary Sewer, transportation projects in the Grandview District, which is just on the other side of the freeway, and Fire Station 3. We had a fire station survey done a couple of years ago about how many fire stations did we need, where should they be. We have a good sense of where we think the last fire station, which is number 3, is going to be, and we're going to be working on that site selection this year with the council. Reliable service. In our reliable service area of our work plan, we're talking about mental health calls for service and how that part of our operation, our reference is increased substantially over the last 10 years. Planning for how we work with the school district around elections for 2025 and beyond. A major part of our work plan that is new to us is how we deal with the new cannabis legislation, recreational cannabis, and how it drives, how it's going to be driving some of our real estate decisions, our zoning decisions, planning decisions, et cetera. There's a fiscal impact to it as well, but we are still learning how that's going to work in our community. Under the livable city piece of our budget, we're talking about affordable housing goals and preparing for the comprehensive plan update, which will come in about 5 years, well, less than 5 years now. Yeah. Finally, in Better Together is where we talk about inclusive community, engaged community. We will, of course, do our 2025 Quality of Life Survey, which is a survey we do biennially, and we do it in odd-numbered years. We did one earlier this year. And refine our community engagement process to reflect current standards. When we look at our 24 proposed consolidated budget, this is what it looks like in the big picture. If all things go according to plan, we will spend around $189 million in 2024 in these particular areas, right? So our governmental funds are really our general fund and debt service and construction fund and our special revenue funds, which like our HRA. In our enterprise area, these are the operations of our organization that perform kind of quasi-business services like utilities, liquor on the retail side, and our park enterprises. So our ice arena, swimming pool, arts center, Centennial Lakes Park, et cetera. On the far right side, our internal service funds are funds that are really derived from the other two, from enterprise funds and government funds, and we use those to support our risk management, equipment operations, our IT, and our facilities operations for the city. When we think about our enhanced services and functions, what we're trying to get at here is that all cities are different. Our city in particular really has a very wide breadth among cities. Our city has a very wide breadth in terms of the kinds of services and functions that we do as a city government. Was mentioned in community comment tonight, we have our own assessing division. Not all cities have their own assessing division. In fact, most don't. But what we've found over the years is that residents appreciate the ability to call and talk to somebody at City Hall when it comes to talking about the value of their property. We are a municipal liquor city. Not all cities are municipal liquor cities. In fact, very few are these days. But we have a great retail liquor operation here, and it generates almost $1 million every year for other parts of our budget. One of the areas where we really stand out in terms of the breadth of services that we have is in our police, fire, and public health areas. We're one of the few cities in Minnesota that has its own public health system and operations. We do a lot of things with two other cities that have those same operations as well, in Richfield and Bloomington. We also do our rental inspections. We operate the South Metro Public Safety Training Facility jointly with the cities of Bloomington, Eden Prairie, and the Metropolitan Airports Commission. We operate our own 911 dispatching system, which we think is very important to our service level in the community. And finally, we operate our ambulance service here, the Advanced Life Support or ALS system. We're the only city in Hennepin County that operates its own ALS system and one of the few in the state that does that. But we think operating that system along with our own police department, our own 911 system, we offer our community above average services every minute of every day.
All right, thanks.
Thank you, Manager Neal. Director McAndrews.
Thank you, Mayor. On this slide, we have here the proposed tax levy for the upcoming biennium compared to our current budget for 2023. So you'll see here the different elements or different components of our property tax levy. And overall for 2024, the proposed levy is a 9.15% increase over 2023. That includes the general operating levy, which is the main funding source for our general fund, debt service, our outstanding debt obligations, as well as the construction fund levy. And that includes our equipment replacement levy, special park improvements, the street improvements, as well as capital improvement fund planning projects. We also have here our HRA. For 2025, currently the estimated levy is a 13.48% increase over 2024. A big driver here is the introduction of the debt service for the fire station. We'll be issuing debt for the construction of the fire station this spring, and we expect then the debt service payments to happen in 2025.
One thing I'd like to comment on this particular slide is, while we have a biennial budgeting process, and we have for many years, the only budget aspect that has legal standing when the council approves it this year is the 2024 numbers. 2025 is important. We use that as our model going forward, but it doesn't have the same legal standing until you approve that one sometime in later 2024.
So what makes up the levy increase of 9.15%? We have broken down here the components. The largest driver is salary and benefits. So this is maintaining our current complement of staff, paying competitive wages, providing market adjustments that are consistent with our negotiated labor agreements, paying for health insurance costs, and a significant driver here as well is a 94% increase in workers' compensation insurance relative to current year. We also have 2.38% of the 9% increase is due to service contracts and supply cost increases. So this is everything from specialty blades on snowplow equipment that help with salt reduction to median landscaping and sidewalk programs and just equipment in the shop. We have contracts and supplies that are costing more in the next biennium. About $639,000 of the increases are debt service obligations and construction fund levies that I mentioned. We also have over $500,000 in here for IT systems and security upgrades. A portion of this levy increase is due to facilities and equipment maintenance. Again, this is the materials and equipment and things are costing more, especially as it comes to taking care of our aging facilities. Our budget includes some new positions that I'll speak more about in the upcoming slides. And we also have in this budget $200,000 to support operations at the Centennial Lakes Park. These cost increases are offset by the use of $2 million of one-time revenue from our budget stabilization fund. So without this, the use of this budget stabilization fund, the levy increase would actually be higher. So now we'll talk a little bit about the intended results and the impact from this investment. So these are, as Scott was discussing, our pillars. These are the strategies that are really enabling us to pursue these goals. So for the strong foundation, there is the increased investment in technology systems to ensure the secure, reliable systems that we have protect against threats and work when they're most needed in times of an emergency or natural hazard. So really about 0.5% of that 9.15% is dedicated to this investment. We also have in this budget street lighting replacement to keep the streets safe and reduce energy use. And within the utility fund, we're also increasing support for the utility system and for winter snowplow response duties by adding a utility supervisor. Under the reliable service budget pillar, over 40% of the levy is dedicated to public safety. So you'll see this in public safety response and outcomes by the addition of 4 patrol officers, a mental health response officer, and a neighborhood engagement officer. In addition, about half of this levy increase is dedicated to providing market wage increases and competitive benefits to attract and retain high-performing employees to deliver the level of service that is expected amongst the community. With the opening of the new fire station in 2025, we will be adding 6 new paramedic firefighters. And then we'll also be improving safety and ability to adequately respond to social disruption events in our recreational enterprises with the addition of a facility coordinator in 2024 and in 2025. So kind of taking a step back and looking at our general fund, our main operating fund as a whole, the property tax levy is the main funding source. And as you can see on the right, public safety is the largest use. So majority of the tax dollars go to the public safety priority. And we also see in our budget development and discussions, we used the qualitative data from our quality of life survey this year to really inform the budget. And some of the findings were that residents continue to rate the overall quality of life in Edina highly, so we find it a priority to maintain that current level of service. Residents generally feel safe in the community, but that feeling has decreased. So this is why in this budget there is an increase to public safety staffing levels and programming through the Multicultural Advisory Committee and increased enforcement of traffic enforcement and mental health response team. Residents gave very high ratings to the work of the fire department, so we will continue the growth and development of the fire department, particularly around the advanced life support services and preparing for the new fire station. So now we'll turn to looking at just the general context of the budget and the estimated market value of the city. So we have here in front of us a history of the estimated market value for the city of Edina, which of course can fluctuate based on market conditions and other factors. Approximately 75% of the total market value of the city of Edina is from residential properties, and then 25% is comprised of commercial, industrial, and apartment properties. So from 22 to 23, we saw a $1.27 billion increase in the estimated market value, or about 8.2%. So with residential properties making up the majority of the city's total market value, the median value home is kind of another data point that we use in understanding property assessments and the impact of the proposed tax levy on homeowners in the city. So as I said, the estimated market value increased 8.2%, and the median value home increased 5.3%, from $659,900 to $696,600. And so taking a look now at the change in the levy and what impact that would have on the median value home, this slide compares the median value home from 23 to tax year 2024 with an increase of 5.3%. Then looking at the annual property tax, city property tax on that home, increasing $148.71 or 7.5%. If we were to cut that into monthly payments, it would be about $12.39 increase for the median value home. And just for context, members, if you were to bring that levy down, say 2%, which would be about $1 million, the median value home would pay $40 less than what you see here in annual payments. So instead of paying $2,121, they'd pay $2,081 per year. So residents received their estimated property tax statements for tax year 2024, and it included not only the city's portion of the property tax bill, it also included the other taxing districts. So the next few slides will be showing some background and context for understanding that, the property taxes and the distribution. So for that 9.15% tax increase, that makes up the 23% you see here, but every tax dollar for property taxes comes from other taxing districts as well: Hennepin County, the school district, Met Council, watershed. So on this slide we have a pie chart showing, two pie charts showing the change in property taxes by property type. So on the left, the black and green represent over 50% of commercial and industrial properties that are seeing a reduction in their property taxes. And on the right, it shows that residents, only 14% will see a reduction, while 76% will see an increase of under 10%. And it's important to note that these show overall property tax changes, not just the city's share of property tax changes. To put it into context, we have a few historical background slides. You can see over 12 years the steadily increasing median value home in Edina. Meanwhile, the city of Edina taxes have remained pretty flat, while the total taxes have creeped up. On this slide, we provide this just to show a comparison if we were to control and adjust for CPI in 2003 dollars, what that looks like. Similar trends, the city tax share stays flat, and the total tax fluctuates a little bit, but is increasing. And for a comparison point again, if we were to take a $400,000 home and show the property tax history, looking at the city tax, pretty flat, slight decrease in the past 2 years. And then similarly, it's actually going down overall for the total tax. So another comparison point we use is just looking at how Edina compares to some of our neighbors and comparable cities. So here we have some of our other suburban communities taking a look at their tax rate, what that tax rate means on a $700,000 house, which is similar to our median value, and then what that looks like on a $1 million house. Edina has, relative to our neighbors, a lower tax rate. So if we are looking at a $700,000 or $1 million house, that house would pay less in taxes than they would, say, in these other communities that we have listed here. Same communities, but just taking a look at their median value homes and proposed levy increases. There's a bit of a variety here, but Edina does have the highest median value home out of this group of peers. We also have the proposed levy increase of 9.15%, which is higher than some of these. I think it's important to note that each city has their own story about what is going on with their budget, so it is difficult to compare apples to apples by just looking at the numbers. So next steps, staff recommend that council members adopt resolution 2023-95 adopting the 2024 property tax levy and operating budget. As we've discussed, if not today, the final day to take action would be December 19th. But with that, to stand for questions.
Good. Yeah, thank you, Manager Neal, and Ms. McAndrews, thanks for that. Council members have questions budgetarily related? This is, I don't know, maybe the sixth presentation or so that we've seen on this, but we've been working on this from the concept of our budget pillars and the things that we think are important in our community all year long, really, from the retreat time until tonight. And I think there's a few questions to be proffered yet, and I'll turn to Member Pierce right now.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So I think two questions. On one of the slides, and I don't know if we talked about this earlier or not, when we talked about the dynamics of commercial paying less, residential is higher. Can you describe what dynamics are going on within the budget that are creating that difference between commercial and residence?
Yes, Councilmember Pierce, members of council. The dynamics are interesting and they're fluid. They change every year, and it has to do really more with how that sector of property is going up, down, or staying the same in terms of its market value. And is it growing? Is there more of it or less of it in a community? So it can get bigger, smaller, it can get more valuable, less valuable, and that's just on the commercial side. We also see that on the residential side as well. What we have seen more recently is that commercial property getting less valuable and residential property continuing to grow in value. And when it does that, there can be some tax shifting that goes on from the residential side to the commercial industrial side, and that's a bit of what we're seeing this year. In other years, we've seen the opposite happen too.
Okay, thank you for that.
Just as a segue on that, what role does the state play in that adjustment between commercial and residential as it affects how the county might tax or how we tax?
The state gives overall direction to our assessing division, both at the city and the county level. They provide some parameters that they want to see in terms of how our assessors, both at city and county level, work to establish values. They want those values to be between 95 and 105% of market value. And if they think that you're not doing that, they will press you to show your math, right? And so that's something that we have not seen. Our assessors do a pretty good job of keeping our property kind of at or around 100% of what it's supposed to be valued at.
All right, I'm going to go back to Member Pierce now. Thanks for your indulgence.
Yep, no, thank you. And so then the second question is on the how Edina compares slide. So we love comparisons, if you want to bring that up. And I just, what I would love for, I'll say the two of you to do, I think it's pretty easy to take this slide and just compare the taxes on a $700,000 home and then look at the tax rate and then see where Edina is. And that's an acceptable comparison. But I think a better comparison is to talk about what, for that rate in Edina, the quality of services, service level, however you want to describe it, might be different compared to what other communities may be getting for the same, or in some cases even more of a tax bill. So if you could, in general, speak to what some of those differences are, I think it'd be valuable.
Sure. Could we go? Yeah, here they are. I think one of the ones that I'll point to, and we've had discussion about it tonight, is our police, fire, and public health services. Because when you compare our level of service in these areas, the 911 dispatch center that we have, our fire providing advanced life service, ALS system, and our police that we have right here, I think that combination of those services is second to none. It's better than any of, I would say this to my colleagues if they were here, but it's better than all of those cities combined in terms of a comprehensive set of public services, law enforcement services. It's just exceptional.
I do think in one example that was given, I think it was Richfield, where they had the option to get the service for free from the county, but chose to pay us for it.
County services are also exceptional. We want to make sure that we say that a couple times tonight. But yes, there was an opportunity for them to receive dispatch services from this county. They chose not to do that at that time. They decided to contract with our city because they felt like the value they received for the money they paid was the best way to continue to provide those services for their residents.
Good, thank you. That's it.
Member Jackson.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. So when we were looking at the various cities, I remember the discussion we had about street funding. The response was we were unique in doing 100% assessments. I didn't prep for this ahead of time, but as you were discussing the other cities, I was thinking, I believe Minnetonka taxes 100% for their streets. So as we're making that transition, that's one of the things that's unique about our finances. And do you have a little bit of history about how much property taxes we saved by assessing, and as we're transitioning to that tax-based street assessment or street repair?
Councilmember Jackson, members of council, we a couple of years ago, I think it was probably 3 years ago by now, we decided to implement an 18-year transition from what we currently do, which was to assess most of our street infrastructure projects on an assessment policy, to one where we will tax for that. The trick to making that work and being equitable about it really was this long transition period, and I think we're approaching the third year of it right now. We're going to talk about that in depth, both on the policy side and the fiscal side, at a special council meeting next week. Yeah. And so part of what I would say tonight is I think we're going to answer that question in great depth, and you'll still get to know where we stand before you make a final decision on this budget. But right. It's a tricky thing to do.
And that part I remember, but I think we were also unique in, I think the point I'm trying to make is that we were unique in having 100% assessed street repair.
Right.
And that compared to our neighbors, as we transition, we're beginning to look more like them, but we've got to catch up.
Yes, that's right.
And that's the point I'm making, which is one of the things that is change, affecting our tax rate. And I think we had a in-depth discussion about the public safety expenses. Would it be worthwhile for us to, and I'll throw this out to my colleagues, to ask to see what we would have to give up if we were to lower the tax rate? Because I know a lot of what's driving this is the increase in the cost of labor. And I will throw that out to my colleagues as to whether we want to have that discussion or not. But I think we have this very high level of service, and it's approved by the quality of life survey that people like the high level of service, but it does cost money. And I'll just throw that to my colleagues. Thank you.
Good. Thank you, Member Jackson. Member Risser.
Thank you. Building on what Member Jackson just noted, I would be curious to learn more about what possibly could be saved if we looked at eliminating assessing, but I want to ask if that service has been part of our quality of life survey and if residents have weighed in on that. So it's kind of a two-part question, and one based on our community comment period where that was asked. But in general, I kind of am not exactly enthusiastic about going down that path with that caveat.
Good. Member Agnew, anything?
I mean, I think overall, we've had a lot of opportunity to ask a lot of questions over the course of this. And I think for me, I'll just echo and kind of say I would be interested in going through that analysis that Councilmember Jackson recommends of being able to really highlight what we would have to take away from the budget. I think just to add the color, because when we first started this, right, like the numbers could have been higher, and they started out higher. And I know that we've gone through this refinement and intentionality, knowing that like costs are rising and wages aren't, right? Like we are all very aware of that and conscious of that. So I do think that it would be helpful to shape some of that conversation. But I think that the reality is, right, like we want to be investing in public safety. And that's so top of mind. And it has been all years we've been talking about this. But I think that it's been underscored. And so in general, I don't have a specific question other than to double down on that request of seeing what would have to be taken away.
All right. Good. Thank you for that. I'm going to go back to Member Pierce.
So I would echo that. I would like to see that. But, I'll frame it a little bit differently. So our budget's $189 million. I've been responsible for budget around $230 million. And so the numbers are big numbers. But what's funny is everybody interprets them the same way. So I'm running a shared service. I go to a BU leader and I say, my budget is this big, and here's what your allocation is. Every resident is a BU leader. They're getting an allocation for services. Some they may use, some they don't. But what I have learned is, even though this number is smaller than what I'm used to, it is far more complicated in the way things are set up and managed. And so for me, going through that exercise, I think adds a lot more clarity and transparency around things. And so in my case, I could sit down with the BU leader and I can say, well, these are the levers that you control. If you want this cost to be less, then buy fewer laptops, use fewer servers, send fewer emails, and they can go control that. The rest of this, you can't control it. You have to trust that we're going to manage it in a way to make sure it's optimized and it's efficient and it is on par from an expense standpoint to some other competitors. that doesn't necessarily work very well or transfer to how city government runs their budget. But I do think that transparency and clarity piece is what would be beneficial. And I'll give one example. We had a resident tonight that said they believe in public safety. So why don't we get rid of those liquor stores and then get more police officers? All right, well, if we were to do that, like, there's a process that is a pretty lengthy process to even be able to do that. But I doubt that that resident understands what some of those dynamics are. And so I think going through a bit of this process should help us be able to provide some transparency. And then I sit here and I recognize that even in my example, when I talked to the BU leader at the end of the day, they still weren't satisfied with it, but they understood it. And I think that is really the intent behind this, is helping more people understand the construct, what some of the factors are, what levers we actually do have, what you're actually getting when you're comparing against your neighbors. Here's the high level of services that you're actually getting. That's what I think will come out of being able to do this. And so I think we should take the pause to go do that work as best as we can, and then come back on the 19th and review that, and then make that final decision, especially since we're doing a public hearing tonight. We'll get more feedback from residents as well.
Yeah. Well said. Thank you. I think from the beginning of our budgetary work months and months and months ago, it all starts with looking at those foundational elements that our residents have told us are important to them, and looking at the delivery of services our residents have told us are important to them. And so when we get to the analysis of what can we do from a budgetary standpoint to deliver on what you said you wanted, and what might not we be able to deliver on that you said you wanted, that's a good conversation to have. It's just another way of saying what you said in a more articulate way, I think. And that's so, I'm in favor too of not making a budgetary decision tonight. We're going to take public testimony. I see at least one of our residents here that may wish to testify. And there may be some folks online that wish to testify, but I think we should keep this matter open until noon on December 11th for public hearing purposes, and then act on it on December 19th. So I think we're all kind of the same mindset here, is that there's, though we are at the 5-yard line, there's still some really important things to occur here between now and the time we finish our work. So anything else for staff at this point in time? From council members? All right. Let's then open this matter up for public testimony. This is a public hearing matter. And we're going to take public testimony. We may have some in the audience that wish to testify. At least one gentleman who wore his Edina green shirt tonight. Thank you for that. And I think it probably has different sorts of implications beyond supporting the town, but
no,
in talking to budget.
It's always been green, but green is the color of money. My name is Ralph Sickert. I live at 4311 Cornelius Circle. Mayor, council members, during the November work session, Mr. Neal promised that this evening's presentation would be, and I quote, more robust. The only thing more robust about tonight's presentation was the waistline of the budget itself. Residents and especially council members, ask yourself, how are you smarter, better informed for having listened to the 4 presentations and received the 100+ pages shared by Mr. Neal's team? A council member's quote from the November work session speaks volumes. How do we message this increase to residents? It was a great question, to which staff had no answer other than Mr. Neal's promise of a more robust presentation tonight. What I didn't hear tonight was a single example of how city operations have become more efficient and the associated dollar impact of that improvement on spending. I appreciate the questions that Mr. Pierce has asked tonight. It's exactly what needs to happen. I as well have worked at budgets over $200 million. And the types of things that you talked about weren't in that presentation tonight. Tonight's approval of utility rates failed to address the prior year reduction for commercial accounts. As a result, commercial accounts will continue to pay less in 2024 than they did in 2022. Meanwhile, residential accounts will pay much, much more. That's $40 million of revenue that's generated by the city for water utility rates. Number 4, WAC and SAC fees remain thousands of dollars below what is needed to fund the Cahill expansion, a line item on your budget that you say is moving forward. Yet another gift to developers. Staff's presentation would have you believe that the increase was a mere 9% until tonight, a presentation that wasn't shared with residents ahead of time. Nor was the work session presentation shared with residents ahead of time or even posted subsequently to the website. What the 9% doesn't make clear is that it would have been 13% without the one-time credit from the Budget Stabilization Fund of $2 million. Dare I say slush fund? No, I won't go that far. But what would be fair is that many residents don't trust what staff shares with them, a point noted by council members, internal reports, and the fact that only 2 residents commented on Better Together Edina, one of whom wouldn't even share their name. But how can you have trust when Mr. Neal's team is either unable or unwilling to be transparent with residents on issues like those above? So robust? Far from it. This budget's lack of transparency would be chilling to almost any private company CFO or board of directors. I look forward to a robust discussion from the council.
Thank you, Mr. Zickert. Mr. Zickert has raised an issue that we talked about, I guess, in a couple of different work sessions, and that we didn't touch on in the public hearing tonight, and that was utility rates. And I think that's another thing we should cover in the December 19 meeting is that I don't know if it's disparate would be the correct word, but the allocation of the rate allocations or the rate setting between commercial and residential and walk through all those numbers at our December 19 meeting. So do we have anybody online that wishes to testify? Director Benarott? No. Okay. Another disappointed no. All right. Council members, any further questions that come to mind that you want to ask staff based on any of the testimony that you've heard or further thought that you've given to this budget matter? All right. I think we've all got the same view of the world here that we need to continue this to the December 19 City Council meeting. So is there a motion to close the public hearing at noon on December 11th, 2023, and then continue the action on the budgetary request for 2024 to the December 19, 2023 City Council meeting?
So moved.
Second.
Member Jackson moves. Member Agnew seconds. The motion is stated. Any further discussion? All those in favor of adoption of the motion stated say aye. Aye. Opposed? Carried. We'll deal with this matter on December 19th. Thank you. Thank you for your input. Reports and recommendations. We're close to getting to our friends from the county. Thanks for their patience this evening. I don't think they expected to sit through yet another budget hearing at somebody else's place. They had to do that themselves, probably many times. And they brought the big boss with them tonight, too, which is really interesting. And nice to have him back in Edina. And we'll talk to him here in a minute. But we're going to move on now to reports and recommendations, as I mentioned earlier. And we've got the first matter there is Resolution 2023-96. That's accepting donations. We've got some donations to the city we need to approve on a supermajority basis. Is there a motion to adopt Resolution 2023-96?
So moved.
Second.
Member Agnew moves the adoption of Resolution 2023-96. Member Jackson seconds the adoption of that resolution, which accepts donations on behalf of the City of Edina. Any further discussion? All those in favor of adoption of Resolution 2023-96, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Carried. Donations this reporting period. We've got some in-kind donations to the Senior Center from Summit Place and Alina Health. Park and Rec got a donation of a canoe and some Caribou Coffee donation there from Caribou Coffee. But one of the significant things that came in terms of contributions was the Edina Fall into the Arts Festival that the Chamber now runs for the Crime Fund. And the Division of Revenue there's over $12,000 going to the Chamber of Commerce and from the Chamber of Commerce into the Centennial Lakes Fund. The Arts Center is getting a little over $6,000 and the Crime Prevention Fund, I don't know if that's a typo or not, I think they get a lot more money than $292, but I'm guessing that might be $29,000 something. We'll see what it is. We might have to have a corrected resolution here, but take a look at that. I saw that number, $292.93. I said, no, that's not right. Okay, thanks. And now we're going to move on to sketch plan review for 7001 York Avenue, something we've really all been looking forward to. And David Huff, you've got a good crew with you tonight. Do you want to come up with your team and introduce everybody, and we'll have this conversation? David Huff, our county administrator, raised 3 kids, happen to be triplets in our community, and then retreated to the western suburbs to a condominium.
A couple of them valuable city employees.
Where they didn't have a room.
Mr. Mayor, council members, thank you for having us this evening. I'm Dave Huff, from the Hennepin County Administrator, and lived in Edina for over 45 years, so love the city. This project that we're going to describe this evening and present has been 12 years in the making. And a lot of things have happened over those 12 years, including a global pandemic. Fits and starts with where we're going to place the facility. And we're very excited at this time to discuss this opportunity to partner with Edina for not only a beautiful park, but for the inclusion of an arts center in a world-class library. Hennepin has 41 libraries spread throughout the county. We're very proud of our nation-leading library system. So I'm going to, at this point, introduce, and then I'm going to have each individual go down the line and introduce themselves. So I'm going to introduce Margot Geffen, who is the county's Director of Facilities, who oversees our 124 properties. And she can then, I also want to introduce Scott Dimstra, our new library director, who relocated from Michigan to the beautiful state of Minnesota. He lives in Hennepin County, that's really important, and oversees this library system, which is a phenomenal system. So, Margot, thank you.
Margot, nice to see you.
Thank you, nice to see you too. Thank you, Mr. Huff. I would also like to introduce Matt.
Would you reintroduce yourself for everybody, please?
Sure. I'm Margot Geffen. I'm the Facility Director for Hennepin County. And on my team is Liz Viderco, who works for Facility Services and is the project manager for Southdale Library. And then Matt from MSR and Scott in the audience from MSR are going to tell you more about our library tonight. Thank you.
All right. And welcome. Nice to see you here in Edina. And welcome to this whole library operation. And
thank you so much. And my name is Scott Dimstra. I'm the, as David Huff has said, I'm the library director for the Hennepin County Libraries. And I hope as we talk about the project, I'm able to share kind of a project narrative about how the library is currently used, but also thinking about the library in the future as well, too. So I look forward to presenting some numbers to you, but also some feedback that we've heard from the community regarding the library as well, too. So thank you.
All right, very good. Thank you. Thanks for being with us.
Yep. We can, we can share this one actually.
Mayor, council members, it's a pleasure to be here tonight, and very exciting to talk to you and listen to your comments about a sketch plan for Southdale Library, Hennepin County Southdale Library, along with the Edina Arts Center. So I'd like to kick off with just a little bit of background about who I am. I'm Matthew Kruntrad. I'm a principal architect with MSR Design here in Minneapolis. We're 41 years in the making, working on libraries across the nation. I've been extremely fortunate to work on libraries for 20 of those years at MSR across the nation. And I don't take fortunate lightly. Working with communities around the nation really is special. These are foundational things for communities. It brings people together, helps them educate, becomes an integral part of lifelong learning. And so every step of the way is not a light step, it's an important step. And tonight is one of those important steps. So what I'd like to do is just maybe kick off. I'll pass it over here to Scott here in a minute, but if I can make sure I operate this right.
Could you give us your business address too?
Yes,
Matthew?
it's 510 Marquette Ave South, Minneapolis, Suite 200. So we're looking at a slide here, which is the location. It's R1 zoning is where we're at. It's the current site for the Southdale Library. The planning R1 allows for conditional use for library. We won't be needing any variance or any adjustments to it except for a variance for the height, likely. The current planning has us about 50 feet tall. It's allowed 40 feet. The current facility is about 60 feet, so we'd be reducing in size. Part of our strategies, and we'll talk about this in a little bit, is deconstruction, looking at the existing facility, deconstruction, reuse, heavily into sustainability in terms of how we're addressing the overall project. Liz, just jump in whenever you want. So. Schedule-wise, there's been a lot of conversations in the community. As was mentioned, it's a 12-year process that's been going on. We do have a continued engagement through the community. A lot of the engagement has been with the library system, library staff, outside communities, looking at all the plans that are in place. So the climate action plans, both of Hennepin County, Edina, as well as trying to address sustainability broadly through B3, which is the Minnesota measure, which if you're familiar with LEED, we'd be meeting basically LEED Platinum with the overall design. So strategies embedded in that, to give you a reference point for that. So looking forward, we'll have continued engagement meetings here coming in 2024. And then throughout 2024, the best connection to the community is really the librarians. They know their community really well. All that is part of the feedback, but as well other types of outreach and engagement. So you can see the schedule reaches through 2024 is an intense, fun time of looking at the design in more broad ways. Okay, so I'll let Scott talk here for a little bit.
Thank you, Matt. And Matthew is somewhat modest about MSR Designs. They are an award-winning firm. The library that they worked with in Missoula recently won Library of the Year. And so pretty much the best public library within the world as well, too. So, and that was from a design perspective about looking at the space of the library and the usability of the library as well, too. And that's the goal of this project. So if you look at the project narrative, it's about creating a welcoming, accessible space that's used for learning, creativity, and civic engagement. And if you look at how the Southdale Library is used right now, it's the fourth most visited library within Hennepin County. And those numbers are for 2022. We've even seen for 2023, they've grown by quite a bit. So for visits, we'll reach over 200,000 visits in 2023. It's the sixth highest volume of physical checkouts out of our 41 libraries. And again, it is expected to grow in 2023. They've already hit 260,000 checkouts this year already for Wi-Fi connections. And the next one, the second highest information counts, that shows kind of how people are using the space. So for the Wi-Fi connections, what that number tells us is people are looking for a space that they can bring in their own device. They can have comfortable seating, they can plug in, or they can sit inside, or they can sit outside to actually use their devices. The last bullet point on there shows how people actually use the space within interacting with staff as well too. So that second highest information counts. That's a question anywhere from my homework's due tomorrow, can you help me finish it by finding resources, to I need help finding job assistance, to I need to find the latest bestseller, where's it on your shelf? So all of those are what we call information questions within the library, but you'll see outside of Minneapolis Central, which is a fairly large library, has the second highest information counts. So people are using the space to interact with staff, but they're also using it for research purposes as well. Thank you. So how we gathered the feedback, it isn't just looking at statistics on how people have used the library. As Matthew said, we surveyed community members about how they use the library and what they would actually like to see in the library as well too. So that was done by online and paper options. We did an audit of on-site library collections. So how many materials are on the shelf versus how many materials are we actually bringing in based on member requests. We did staff engagement sessions, which Matthew talked about the importance of doing that in the future. We've already done some of that, but we need to talk to staff to learn how the community uses the library, but what are also the staff needs within the library as well too, so that they can offer the services that the community needs. And then, as I pointed out on the previous slide, we look at usage statistics. So how are people using the library, and how we can develop the space inside and outside the library to meet those needs. Next slide. And then lastly, we look at the physical building. So some of the feedback that we heard from the public is there are some accessibility barriers to the current space. So it has 2 floors, and parking lots are barriers to entry for a number of individuals. Easy to find drive-up book drop. That is something that if it's confusing, if it's in a path where there's multiple traffic, it creates a book drop that is not accessible for members of the community. Access and accessibility are key. That's what we heard time and time again. And also create a welcoming facility for all neighborhoods and kids and family. And then probably most important, when I talked about the collection, is also collections. You have a lot of shelving within the library space. You have a lot of furniture within the library space. How do you create safety within that library space? You do it through sight lines throughout the library as well too. So it not only creates an open floor plan, it actually enhances safety in the space as well too. And then location, hoping for more pedestrian-friendly access to the library. That's bike traffic, that's walking traffic as well. And then easy access to and from errands and routines. So we always talk about the halo effect of libraries. People come to libraries, they also go to other area businesses as well too. So how do you keep that within the plan? And then features, bringing in natural light into the space through the exterior of the building, adjacent green spaces, and as I talked about, if you remember that key statistics about Wi-Fi use within the space, how can you have outdoor seating and potentially outdoor events in the space as well too? And so with that, I'm going to turn it back to Matthew.
Thank you, Scott. So this next slide is demonstrating how partnerships are important. And what was mentioned earlier with Missoula Public Library, which did win Best Library in the World, the first in the Americas to win this award. And it didn't win it solely through the design. It won it because of the relationships in the partnerships and where next generation libraries are really going. And that's a key piece to what we're talking about today. We're setting up a relationship with the community and the county and city through design, and that's what's special, right? And Missoula did that in a way that is really unique. It's where all libraries are really looking for and striving for with rich partnerships within the city or the community they reside in. And this slide just shows that there's some relationship where efficiency equals value, but also equals better relationship and stronger services. So we go through a process like this, and we've been working with the EAC and Hennepin County Library to pair them together. That value gets, as I mentioned, better efficiency, but also creates a real synergy with the community in ways that expand beyond what you can imagine from your typical library visit or art center visit. So what does this all mean? We're getting to kind of a description of it, but we want to acknowledge that all of this is also related to your goals, and specifically for the Greater Southdale District with the guidelines. There's great areas of alignment, specifically with the ideas of placemaking, in the public realm, and you'll see this in some of the site planning and development of it, what the larger context is, how it creates a collective part of the community, and then really addressing 200 years of planning that you're looking forward to by addressing the scale of the block to the best that we can. The future of Southdale, what we're organizing it around is human activity, specifically the public realm. If you think of public libraries, arts center, park space, all of these are public realm. It's meant to be accessible, equitable in terms of access, all of these things embedded in what libraries and the Arts Center, by extension, can do as well. Innovation, we like to think that we're bringing innovation to it, but I think, as mentioned earlier, Hennepin County library system is a premier library system. They expect quality, and they deliver it in their service and through the facilities that they build. It's been a proven thing, and they're well looked up to across the nation. Other things that we're looking at is what is the new model for healthy living in a community. You've got density happening, good density and planning around that. This is a great piece of contribution to that as an asset. So the site itself is challenged. We'll see some things here briefly about stormwater, how we're approaching daylight with daylight autonomy, and then energy production and things on site as well. So sunlight, connecting to the ground plane, thinking of it as a very porous, accessible facility, and then resulting in how we scale down the larger blocks. So being mindful of your overall plans. Things to think about, this is a 5-sided building. It has a roof, it has 4 sides, all of it oriented around human activity. We have to deal with safety issues concerning how vehicles and pedestrians, bicycles, bus drop-offs, all those things come together in an integrated way. Transparency is key. We want to make sure that it's welcoming to all. So those 5-sideds have very transparent, open, accessible approaches to them. We have rooftop decks allowing for access for the community to engage in an elevated view, sunsets, sunrises, content from the library or Edina Arts Center as well. And then making sure that those 5 sides are not packed with mechanical equipment and things like that. Understanding scale inside of it, and addressing the neighborhoods, associated neighborhoods. You'll see on this slide there's specifics about each of the frontages that we have. Most specifically, no curb cuts on York. There's going to be development of the York street front. We're plugging into that, especially with the transit. And then making sure that there's good, accessible, wide sidewalks and cross-pollination between the ways you access the library and the site. Xerxes Ave, again, you've got a neighborhood scale, a very intimate scale. There currently is a big boundary with the topography and the inability to navigate to the facility. All that is looking to be corrected through a restoration of the site and reparative nature of it. A site that has great history, a long history. Some in the room may have played there as a quarry. Unofficially played there, right? But we think of that as a vital part of the community and sort of some of the relationships that happen with it. So again, thinking about all these things that are embedded in your plans and addressing them. Biggest challenge is the floodplain, right? That this is a site that is managing water very intensely. If you look at the 100-year floodplain, it takes up nearly a third of the site on the south, and we have to acknowledge that and build a strategy in for that, and not in the manner that it's done. It's currently a large paved parking lot. Our strategy is looking at taking away the 80% impervious surface and reducing it below 20% for the whole entire site. So you can see what the implications of that. Biodiversity, better plant life, better interaction with nature, connectivity to the broader systems that you've already built and connected to the 9 Mile Creek. So a very important strategy in terms of both educational opportunities but health and wellness for the community. So as a summary, extensive floodplain to the south of the site. We can locate to the north of the site. We can eliminate the vast majority of existing pervious paving and have an extensive integration of solutions for that in terms of the landscape. Thinking of the library and art center as more of an extension of the landscape as opposed to something that sits in the landscape. Existing slopes create barriers for the perimeter, so we're looking at holding the north corner, which is more the commercial side, giving the scale to that, but then decreasing scale towards the neighborhood at the east, and then making it welcoming and accessible. Pull back from that 70th to maintain transparency at the ground level. Most libraries right now will have at least 15-foot ceilings on their floor, so there's very generous open feeling at the ground plane, very transparent, welcoming inside, so that if you're on the streetscape, you do have real strong connections to the interior. And then repair the topography of Xerxes and neighborhood access so it's more mutually associated with the community there. And then scale of existing block to compatible district goals. So again, thinking of the 200-foot block, those access points, and making it really accessible through the site in multiple ways. So you could come from it in any directions and make your way through the services that are going to be provided. So as a kind of overview here, you see 9 Mile Creek Regional Trail, all the park systems and the investments in your community that you've made, both in the history but also recently. And it really is a connecting link, and it becomes a real cultural hub within that link. So it offers other amenities. It's not duplicating things. It's really supplementing them through a set of experiences and access to information, access to community services, all the things that are important for a healthy community. So when we get to the site plan, looking at that, I'll call out a couple things. There, you'll see they're a little bit bold on the sides, a couple things, but we are planning for access at all 4 corners and then mid-block. What you see on the York side is bus drop-off for multimodal. Currently, it's to the south. We'll continue conversations about where best locate that and the best access point for that. But thinking of the future, you know, what happens to the west in terms of development? Does a 200-foot block happen there? Are there crossings? Is it set up for that? You see the multimodal trail connecting across. This will be pedestrian, bicycle, come as you are, plugging into the rest of the existing systems in the surrounding area. You'll see that the Edina Arts Center and Library footprint is held to the corner there, again giving scale and presence. Pulling back on the north in order to allow for a certain amount of ease of access parking, which is about 1/3 of the overall parking. 2/3 is below grade in a secured parking garage. So thinking of this more as pedestrian, car, safety, integrated approach on the north with a main entry and very transparent. There's underground parking, like I mentioned. There's roof decks, especially for some of the kiln space for the Edina Arts Center that are outdoors, along with programming space on the east. Associated with a smaller scale building that's built into the hillside, so you can walk from Xerxes across the landscape into the second level. So you feel like a single story on the neighborhood side and 2 stories on the commercial side. And then you also have the pathways connecting across at multiple ways. There'll be, to remediate the wetland and flooding, there's a wetland strategy along with interactions in that, so there's educational opportunities about how to do landscape right and create biodiverse environments. So an overview of some of the outdoor activities. You'll see, again, these are in process, so we're pushing things around and really targeting things, but we know there's some key elements that we want to maintain. Again, those trailhead as part of 9 Mile Creek will be present near the library as part of the educational opportunities. There's a children's outdoor zone, library plaza. Again, those planted terraces on the roof decks, they're accessible to the second floor and overlooking the wetland area with a trail. There's transit hub and connectors. neighborhoods alongside of it. So again, integrating all of that into it. When we talk about sustainability broadly, this is a very robust strategy. Again, it's addressing the Hennepin County Climate Action Plan, Edina Action Plan, Climate Action Plan, as well as B3, and very high aspirations from everybody involved. But there's infiltration, there's cooling through the landscape. Thinking of more of a, you could describe it as what would have been there, the oak savanna, some sensibility to how you sit within the trees, and it's not a very dense forest or anything like that, but it's a very diverse set of microenvironments through the landscape that you can experience. So you see some of the things that are there: evapotranspiration, carbon sequestration, all those things built into the landscape alongside of the water management. And then from a performative building standpoint, we're looking at healthy materials and making sure that any materials don't have off-gassing through chemicals that they're produced by inside of it. The orientation in the site plan is ideal. It's south-facing. It can collect solar as it needs, reject it as it needs, and then it has good opportunities for photovoltaics, which will be part of the project. We're working towards trying to get to 100% daylight autonomy, meaning all the spaces are daylit inside of it through that orientation, and then high-performing facades as well with passive design strategies. So very sustainable with geothermal and all those things involved. So operationally, this is a long-standing, many decades in existence, and so operation is important in terms of cost, and every year adds up. So this is just kind of a summary of those things that I just mentioned. You can kind of browse those, but again, there are those other cultural aspects to sustainability. Ideas of inclusivity, access, connecting to neighborhoods, and making it feel like it's part of who they are, also provides for sustainable attitudes towards how we do structures, or thinking about how the planning and design goes together. And then you have the kind of more technical, which is, I mentioned earlier, the geothermal, photovoltaics, and the water strategies that are embodied in it. So these are images. Again, this is the northwest corner. As you would come into the site, you'd see some of the both pedestrian and bicycle pathways that wrap around, and they would swing across the middle of the site. Again, this is in process. Our strategy is to get the orientation right. So like I mentioned, daylight and solar heat gains or rejection. And then we develop the facade to respond to that. So we've got a lot of work to do to continue to hone what it's like and the overall experience of it in terms of the enclosure and all that. But overall, what you will really want to pay attention to here is the transparency at the ground level, very open. You almost see right through to the park, even from that corner. Walk further down along the north side, there's integrated pedestrian access, vehicle access, same types of transparencies through the library and on up into the Edina Arts Center. So that's Newark Ave and 70th. This would be coming from the neighborhood at Richfield, from Xerxes. So you see the smaller scale feeling. It's a more intimate scale. There'd be an approach. Might be a sledding hill there at some time during the winter, right? We don't know the full planning of the overall. But again, thinking about what Oak Savanna, these microclimates, and individual development of the overall site would be in terms of the landscape. You see some pop-ups things there that'll be letting daylight into the center of the building. Again, strategies for that daylight autonomy. This is looking from the southeast corner. Again, this is that connector that has both pedestrian and bicycle pathways. You see some manicured lawn. We think that it's important to both gesture a more natural, reparative or restorative approach in a majority of the site for that floodwaters, but also acknowledging that there is a neighborhood that accesses, and that manicured, useful lawn, some level of that might be important as part of the overall planning. And then again, looking up towards the transparency, that you see a little bit of the roof deck there that you would sit on coming out of Edina Arts Center or the community spaces. Moving a little bit further, this would be over the wetland water management area. Again, looking right to the north, looking up into both of the facilities nestled into the landscape. And that's it. So I talked a lot. Hopefully we can open it up for questions, or if there's anything else anybody else like to add.
The only one I would mention is the other partnership is with Three Rivers District. I think it was kind of tied with the 9 Mile, but we have that on board as well.
Sure. It was such a perfunctory, that's it, for something that you've shown us that's so extraordinary in terms of its being so thoughtful in so many ways on the work that all of you have done collectively. You know, one thing I've never worried about was architecture of a library done by the county. You always do such a gorgeous job, but this is, at this stage, this is, you know, I can't think of another word other than extraordinary. It gets everybody, I think, really excited about what can be there on that almost 8-acre piece of property. And delighted that we get to be a partner with you folks on it. So I'm sure some of our council members have questions or comments, and I'm going to start with Member Agnew.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you so much for an extraordinary presentation. I don't have a better word than the mayor did. You know, having served now on the city council and prior to this on the planning commission, I think this is by far the standout sketch plan review that I've ever been a part of. What I really love about it is bringing us into this site, feeling what it's going to be like, and especially in such a prominent area of our city of Southdale, feeling how this is going to draw community in a way that the building today doesn't, right? I'm just so excited about all aspects of it, the native landscapes, the sustainability focus, embracing the natural light, looking at the rooftop terrace. And as we were going through, I'm like, oh, well, where's the spot for kids? Well, then you pointed it out, there's a spot for kids. And then, you know, this is our art center as well. And we've been looking for this site, and it's so exciting to see it come together in this amazing partnership. But I will also, I would be remiss if I didn't ask about parking. So that is one area that you didn't go super deep into, other than, you know, I know we saw the big picture, and I've looked at the aerial views of Southdale, and it's seas and seas of parking. And so overall, I think you said moving from 80% impervious to 20% impervious, to like obviously reducing the amount of surface parking. But if you could just at a high level speak to what you're envisioning for that, and even just rough numbers as you have them today.
Yeah. Currently, we are planning 53 parking stalls on surface to the north of the structure. So, and again, that is that's a space that's going to allow for the book drop that we've talked about, access to the parking garage, and then some drop off, as well as some on-surface ADA. We know that there are people that will want a very easily accessible surface parking right to the front door, and so that there's about 53 on that location. Below grade, there's around 100. We're still kind of moving things around with the circulation of that. So we're at 153 total parking stalls on site. We do know that there's, currently the neighborhood has some parallel parking on it. That will probably be a conversation that has to be had about how that gets utilized, because it will change the dynamic. Any kind of change here is going to change the dynamic. But our current numbers are 153 parking stalls, with 100 of them below grade.
How does that compare to what is on site today?
Currently on site, there's over 400. How much? Oh, 475, closer to 500. Yeah. So it's a substantial difference in overall numbers. Yeah.
And it might not need to be said, but obviously this is a regional center.
She needs a microphone.
A regional center, and we don't have our courts there anymore or our service center anymore. So
yeah, good point. Do you know what the parking requirements would be?
Yeah, based on the square footage, it's right around 153, 154 final square. So they're real close at this point.
Yeah, we've worked that number based off of the zoning and some of the reductions through the bicycle and bus access.
Oh, wonderful. Yeah, my angle is always, how can we reduce? I know especially below grade parking is extremely costly. I love that we're reducing the amount of surface parking because that allows us to dedicate so much more space to park and engaging areas, so love that, but just wanting to think about continued ways to reduce. I'm assuming that would a parking study be a part of this process as well?
It would, parking and traffic study.
Okay, perfect. So when those results come back, would just want to minimize as much as possible, especially, I think that there's some nuance here, right? Like you drive by today and there's 7 to 20 cars. That wasn't an official study. But just thinking, yes, there will be the art center, and so that there's that combination to really finesse, but I would really think about where are those situations where, depending on staffing levels, maybe 10 to 15 cars, like where are you also going to have, 100 plus families coming to the site at once, just really challenging the thinking on that. But overall, like that was literally the only thing that I could think of. It feels amazing and it's really exciting. So I appreciate the partnership.
Thank you.
Okay. Member Pierce.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So I also thought this was phenomenal. I won't repeat everything that Member Agnew mentioned. There are a couple of things that really stood out. One, this is our art center, and it looked like a piece of art to me. Like just the angles that you showed, the way people would interact with it, like it felt like very interesting things would be going on in that building and people would want to be a part of it. And so as we talk a lot about how do we engage the community and build structures that those who live near there feel like they're supposed to be there, that's kind of the sense that I got from what you showed. Now, I use libraries quite a bit, and so I've been to Burnsville, I've been to the Eden Prairie, I've been to Southdale, Central, downtown, Ridgedale. And I will say there's some of those that I've only gone into one time and have never returned. There's a couple that I frequent a lot. The Southdale one is one. Ridgedale, I go to a lot, and I do because of the natural light on that one side. Well, I guess there are multiple sides where there's natural light there, but the one side I like to go to, in the wintertime, it's just a nice spot to be. And I'd say this reminded me a little bit of Central. When you've got the underground parking at the library downtown, and when you're in the, I don't know what you call it, I'll call it the city center area, you've got the glass walls and you can see through, and you've got the stairwells that you can traverse, the fireplaces inside. It just invites people in. And so I did get a little bit of a sense of the two libraries that I probably like more, just from a modernization standpoint. I got a sense of some of those aesthetics just looking at what you described. I do use Southdale probably more than the others. Proximity, actually it's not as crowded sometimes. And so to think about, I can't remember when that was built, but it's been there longer than, it hadn't been there longer than I've been alive, has it? No, that couldn't be the case. But it's pretty old. And I still go there. So there's something right about it. And so I just wanted to share that. And so because this is December, right, I do have a wish list. So one of the things that I would ask about would be technology. And so there have been instances where I'm in the middle of doing something, I need to hop into a room for a conference call or something, and you got to check the room out. So I got to go up and, you're in the system or you're not, right? Or you have your card? No, I don't. And so I'm going through all of that just to be able to go into the room. It'd be great if either I could just scan my card, or if it's on my phone, I could do that. I could see the schedule, I could choose a time. So using some technology like that, I think would also just kind of further facilitate the use of the space. And then the other one would be collaboration spaces. I can't recall if I've ever seen collaboration spaces that I'm envisioning in any of the other libraries. I'm sure you'd say a table that's got 6 chairs is a collaboration space, and that's true, but I'm really describing technology. Yeah. So if 6 people want to come to a table, there's a screen there they can pull up, connect, and share what they're working on. It's more that from a technology standpoint. And then the last one, this really is just I'll call it more of a personal thing. So I've been in spaces where I'm working on writing, and then I also am doing like audio books. And so if I want to go listen to it, I can't do that at Southdale in a place where I feel comfortable. There are spaces where you can actually take a call, right? So you can have, you can be louder, right? But it's not inviting for those types of things. And so that's what when I'm getting at spaces that are inviting for different modes of learning or different modes of activity. Especially would be on my wish list too. Especially
post-pandemic, though, spaces like you're describing are really in short supply, and much more, a little bit different, maybe requirements. So all of that's being tracked. And to address your comment about collaboration, I think that's the real beauty. And I mentioned the next generation of libraries is really about these partnerships, and that's really the beauty here of Edina Arts Center and the library coming together. So you think of having a space, oftentimes libraries have what they call makerspace, and if it's unstaffed or you don't have the expertise, it doesn't live in the community in the way it should. But Edina Arts Center is running something similar. And at that point now, Edina Arts Center has access to a librarian that can direct to all this information or make accessible information related to what's happening in the center. And these are the elements of a really robust community engagement and collaboration with each other. So I think what you're talking about is really embedded in, not necessarily design will facilitate it, but in the idea here that everybody has come together for.
Yeah.
And Councilmember Pierce, I'd like to thank you for your comments as well too, and talk about what we are looking at for study rooms as well too, and what we have at some of our 41 libraries throughout the county as well too. When you look at Southdale statistics, they've had about 3,000 reservations for their meeting rooms throughout the year. So that tells us there's a real need and a real desire to have different types of study spaces, meeting rooms, that hybrid work environment that you talked about as well too. We do have that in some of our other libraries as well. That can be anywhere from a study room where it's 1 to 2 people, up to 4 people, up to 12 people, up to 20 people that you can accommodate as well too. So it is something that, as we look at the layout of the library and the services that we offer, we'll take that into account as well too.
Awesome. And then I remember Agnew slid me the date that Southdale was built. So I was 4 years old, so it was close. I was close. Thank you very much.
Member Jackson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Well, this is a dream come true. I mean, it's really beautiful, and it's Wonderful. I will say, when we're at the sketch plan stage, I'm thinking primarily about how I, as a pedestrian, am going to move through the space. And so I went out and walked the space today, and it is a gravel pit, and everything is low. Yeah. So the first question I have for you, it looks as though in your renderings that you're going to be raising the topography on the north side. Can you talk a little bit about what that experience coming off of 70th Street towards, I assume that's where the front door is, along 70th, what that experience is going to be like and the elevation drop?
Yeah, it's... If you went out to the site and stood at York and 70th, the main floor is going to be slightly above that, but you wouldn't notice very much the incline to it. So it really, from the east, it is tucked in and lower. So it'll appear single story from the east. So that whole area in this plan that you're seeing up there right now, the hillside grove and the parking is really kind of concealed and nestled in there and meant to be a multimodal access at that point. So again, the first floor on that side is, floor to floor is around 20 feet. So it's a very tall story. It's taller than this space, or roughly about this space. So that amount of glass is being developed on that north side. So if you're walking along there, you're seeing right in to the library itself.
So it will come down from 70th, like similar to what it currently does.
Oh, exactly.
Yeah.
Okay.
And that's part of the reason why we're pulling it back, is so that we're not digging into the ground.
Okay.
Yeah.
But there is an extension. We're repairing some of the landscape. In this plan, if you look at where it says the outdoor kilns, that is a slight slope up. So you're connecting from Xerxes on a pedestrian right up into the second level.
Okay.
So there's multiple, it's thought of as much more porous and pedestrian oriented. So you walk through the site through the facilities.
So you'd be able to enter from the east as well as from the north.
Right.
Okay, and then there won't be a door along York, is that correct?
Along York, it's mainly through the north and south, but it's very accessible. Yeah.
So this is a small thing, but when I look at the sidewalk plan going along York, I think about a sidewalk along our major arteries in the Southdale area as being pedestrian highways, essentially. Yeah. So that the curving is pretty, but if I'm in an apartment and I want to get to the grocery store, that curving is going to get tired over time. So, so I encourage to make that, and you've got the walkability going, but to make it think of it as more of an artery rather than an experience. Yeah. My other question is, I sort of saw, in my head, the way I saw this plan was along York is the formal business, commercial view to the west. To the north is the entrance. To the east is inviting the neighborhood in, and then to the south is learning and playing. And I want to make sure that along York, whether you're going north or south along York, this is a library. And so I saw the sign, it looked like it was oriented south, but I come from the north, so I wanted to say, this is my library, and this is gorgeous, so that people passing by will know this is the jewel in the crown here. And I want to have that sense of identification as a library. And it'll have the light and everything, you'll see the books, but also I want to make sure that wayfinding is there. So
Agreed.
Thank you.
Yes.
This is really beautiful. So thank you so much.
Thank you. Member Risser.
Thank you. I was that Minneapolis kid who rode the bus to Southdale to go to the library. I also took classes at the Edina Art Center. And one of the things I was apprehensive about when I heard about this plan was our current art center is surrounded by nature. And you have alleviated that fear by providing a plan that has so much nature. And I can see, we talk about outdoor kilns, the Library of Native Plants. You could teach botanical art on this site, and I think that's really huge and really significant, particularly from a mental health standpoint, from kids not being outdoors enough. and all of that. So I really love this plan and appreciate all of the thought that went into it. To be totally clear, my primary concerns have to do with our side of things, and I did ask to have an image that I think shows a 0.5 acre strip of land that we own that could impact the way that southeast corner is handled.
Yeah, there it is. Is there Southdale graphic?
That's not the...
We do have it kind of represented in one of our diagrams.
Yeah. Okay, so this belongs to the city of Edina, and we haven't really done anything with it, but I think at this juncture it would make so much sense for this to be included in your plans, because it could connect the library to Adams Park, and I think that would be a really great thing, and we could enhance that bike and pedestrian pathway and get it out of the street if that's the way it is. And so I just want to publicly make a push for that, and I don't really know if you've had any dialogue about that, but a little bit. Okay, if we're not going to use it now, when would we ever use it? So I think that would be really kind of neat, because you could have a trail coming more down into the middle. The other concern after watching the Planning Commission meeting had to do with the Greater Southdale Design experience. And I really appreciate the comments that you made at the very beginning about this being a process that has unfolded over so much. And as I look at the Greater Southdale Area Design Guidelines, it really is a plan that was pre-pandemic. And it breaks things down in a way that is really very rigid. And we lose a lot when we do that. One of the things that I really like, Member Jackson pointed to, was this pedestrian pathway along York Avenue, and how that's not broken, and how you're limiting the access for automobiles just along 70th Street, which is, so great in terms of pedestrian and bike safety. So I love this. I really do. I think you've done it. And as far as the other thing, we do have stipulations where you have to have a 20-foot ceiling on the first floor. You have to have 75. I have pushed back against this in that, if it works for you, great, but I am a little concerned about when it puts a burden on projects, and I've kind of been advocating for us taking another look at that, because sometimes it does undercut sustainability. So I want to say that as well. But this is so thoughtful. And I just, go you. You're fantastic.
Thanks, Member Risser. When you were talking about, somebody else mentioned this too, the elimination of impervious surface. When you drive by there now, you kind of want to go like this as you drive by, and you see that big dip and that wall-to-wall asphalt. And one of the things as over the years, as we've talked about keeping the library, once we got to the discussion of keeping the library on this site, was, we headed in a direction of more density on the site because of the 7.75 acres. But I feel like we've really found something that is just so fantastic that we never could have achieved if we would have gone the higher density route and tried to put a library, an art center, and a senior housing, whatever it might be, office building, retail. This is going to be something extraordinarily special, not only to our town, but I think to our state in a way, because it makes such a statement on really on energy, on life, on living, on humanity. It's just what you've done, and this is at a very nascent stage here. We can hardly wait to see what comes next. It's Christmas every time you show up. The greening of Southdale District, you're part and parcel of that whole thing, and you're kind of you're kind of establishing the linchpin and the model for what happens in the future here. Do you have any concerns about coordination of the design internally on the Art Center and what they need versus what the library needs, and how you configure everything within the design elements that you're going to create for the building?
Partnerships like this take work, right? And we're in the thick of it, and it's been a great conversation so far. You know, I have to say, you know, the comments here are really meaningful, but there's a tremendous amount of people, both from the county, Edina Arts Center, the staff I work with, it's those people that have kind of brought all this together, and it's complicated. It's not easy. So without those people, it doesn't come together. And I think Edina Arts Center has been a great partner at acknowledging the struggle of trying to push two things together, standing up for their needs so that they can provide the service they want. Library as well has really, you know, they know their business, they know how to serve the community, but this is a different cake, right? So it's been really enjoyable. It's a challenge, but I think at this point we've got all the pieces in place, and I can't stand in front of you and say there's any huge roadblocks. There's those expected things, but that's what we do, solve problems. So
yeah, good. Well, it just strikes me that the sense of building design and the landscape design coupled with the site plan, you've created this beautiful sense of destination that is going to draw people from such a broad area just to see it and to be part of it and experience it. It's going to probably be the most significant building in our community.
yeah, you're going to have a lot of visitors.
And we like City Hall. We're here a lot. It's a nice building, but this is really something very, very special. Mr. Huff.
Mr. Mayor, there used to be a library on this site.
That's right.
No, county library. That we did a land swap, a land deal with the city of Edina many years ago, and you built this beautiful building. There's a reason it took 12 years, and the wait has helped us. And the teams that we have working on this, we're very excited, very committed. Next Tuesday, the county board approves a budget, an operating capital budget, and in that capital budget, as part of the capital improvement program, 5-year CIP, there's a $100 million request from the administrator to build this facility. And so, as you said, this is a legacy facility with the nature, the art, the engagement, the collaboration here, true testament to government, multiple government entities moving in the right direction, doing the right thing for our residents. So we're very excited. And your comments this evening, just profound, really well received. We appreciate it. A lot of hard work yet, though.
Yep.
And we're very excited to move this along and work with you to do this.
Now that we've heard what your budgetary requests might be, I'm a little bit reluctant to go Member Risser's route, because you've caused us to think of all kinds of things. All I could think of was, let's beautify the median on York along with the rest of this.
I knew that was
your
next.
median, and I don't want to add to your budget.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. One question, the York Sanitary Sewer Project, when is that? When are you projecting that to start and finish? I mean, is there overlap here with what we're proposing on our time frame?
Say that again, Manager Neal.
Yes, there will be overlap. I mean, I saw the initial schedule there. There will be some overlap in construction schedules.
There are opportunities there.
Yeah, that's a good way to look at it. So thanks, everybody, for being with us this evening and spending this, I think, really special time with us and our community. You've given us a nice lift at an appropriate time after the last couple of weeks. We've had a tough time in our town. So this is really heartening for everybody. So thanks for being here, and we look forward to working with you the rest of the way. And nice to have you as the library boss. Nice to meet you. And Matthew, you do extraordinary work.
Thank you.
Your team.
And thank you.
Everybody here. So thanks for all you do. And and you're led by a wonderful guy who has a wonderful vision, great vision. So, all right, thanks for being here. And
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
we've just got a couple more things on our agenda to deal with. And I don't think we've had any commission correspondence come in. Director Benarott, anything come in that we need to be aware of? All right, manager comments. Manager Neal.
Thank you, Your Honor. I've got 4 quick things for you. The first is the annual board and commission interview process, selection recruitment process is coming up. Our plan this year, unless we hear differently from the council, is to use the same process that we did last year and I believe the year before that. So we interview all applicants who apply. Those interviews are live. We'll do them Zoom. They're live and they're virtual. We'll offer 5 dates, at least enough dates that we think we can include everyone. There'll be 10-minute interviews. We'll have a team of 2 council members, city manager, and 2 commission chairs, which is what we have done in previous years as well. We have a schedule that we got to pay attention to because of the way that our terms kind of fall off for boards and commission members, or start in March of every year. So if we work backwards from there, we need to approve these appointments on February 20th, which means we're scheduling a debrief of the interview teams on Thursday, February 8th. So that's the plan.
Okay.
Okay. School elections, we've completed the assessment of our costs for the elections for 2023. Of the total was $121,693. We operated 16 precincts for this election, but for our referendum, we would have only had to operate 13. Because the school has the ability from a statutory perspective they can reduce the number of precincts for their elections. So our proposal is to account for those 3 precincts that were due to our operations separately from the other 13 that were for the school's election. So that's really a reduction of 19%. So we're going to bill them $97,410, which represents their pro rata share of the total election. So they're receiving that this week. HRA, we've got a special HRA meeting immediately following this meeting where we can take action on the budget if you choose. And finally, we have a special city council meeting scheduled for December 11th at 6 p.m. That does not include a work session ahead or a meal that night, but that is our assessment hearing night where we talk about special assessments and the projects, street projects for the upcoming year. And that's all I've got.
Okay, very good. We've got a little short HRA meeting to approve the HRA budget. Following this meeting, that shouldn't take more than about 5 minutes. But let's move down to council member comments, and we'll go to council member Pierce.
Nothing from me tonight.
Council member Jackson, I'm starting an inside and working out tonight. Just a little throw you off.
Nothing for me. No state championships last week.
All right. Councilmember Agnew.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So it was 2 weeks ago now, November 21st, that we met to discuss organized trash collection as a city council. And following our conversation as a council on that, we received some correspondence from our commission members. And I'm greatly summarizing here and not doing, that communication justice, but I don't think that they felt, one, appreciated, or 2, that they were able to sufficiently communicate the work and the effort and the results of their recommendations. And I think that, it's just worthy of a little bit deeper of a conversation of what are we expecting of our commission members. I think one of the statements, that night was, oh, well, now there's work for the commission to do to try and navigate what ways we can improve trash service. Well, they felt that that's what this was doing, right? They were asked as a commission to go out and do this research and do this assessment, and they spent a lot of time on it. And so I just, one, want to appreciate the efforts that they put into that. I know it was a very long process, but I think just two is just to consider, and it doesn't have to be now, but maybe it's an agenda item for a future retreat or work session of how do we set our expectations for our boards and commissions. This is also something that has come up, I think, with the Planning Commission as well. And I think we really need to lean into identifying the roles and expectations in partnership with MJ and other folks within the city to really set everyone up for success and to leave everyone, and not everything that the commissions recommend is going to be implemented, right? Like that's a reality. But I want them to feel good about their volunteer efforts and their involvement in the city. And right now I know that there are some people who don't. And that's unfortunate. And I would like to be a part of changing that moving forward. So,
thank you for those comments. Well said. Member Risser.
My comments are also about what Member Agnew raised. And first and foremost, I would like to apologize to the Energy and Environment Commission and the Transportation Commission, because I know when we come to council, we have our packet. I also try to do other research so that I really feel prepared. And we get the packet, and I went through it, and I read the report, I read the executive summary, and I took that to be a reflection of how the commissions felt about organized hauling. And then after, when I talked to commissioners, I learned they really didn't feel that it represented their views that well. And so I really feel that if it's going to be a situation like it was 2 weeks ago where we're actually voting on commission work, commissioners need to be heard. They need to be able to come up to the podium. They need to be able to present their work. I understand that organized hauling was presented to City Council, but it was over a year ago, and that was before Member Agnew and I were here. So I feel very badly about it, and we do need to make steps. We need to take steps to ensure that our process doesn't silence our commissioners. Thank you.
Thank you. Member Risser. Yeah, Member Risser and I have had this conversation in the aftermath of the correspondence that you referenced, Member Agnew, and I think there could be circumstances in the future where we have an important issue where a board or commission may have a position that's distinct from that of the staff. And in some circumstances, given the complexity or the depth of the issue, we may want to hear from those folks directly, but I think it's a conversation we can have in the context of a work session or a retreat, as you say, in the future, and make sure that that their voice is heard, or that they feel that their voice is heard, and they've been given an opportunity to have their voice heard as to the work that they've done. So I thought Member Jackson mentioned the Edina football team in the championship game. It was unbelievable how they came back. What character they showed, and it was just that elbow, a foot from the line, that made the difference between coming all the way back. And it was quite a game for the history books, I think, in terms of just the coach and the team and all the coaches deciding we're going for 2 points and going for the win. I thought that was really an interesting decision, and I think many of the community supported it. So it was, I'm really proud of them, and they did a great job. And I let the coach know that we were all proud of him in Edina. So that was a nice note to write to him, and I got a nice note back as well. I don't have anything else of substance to deal with tonight. We talked about some of the important things that are just being dealt with in our community at the beginning of the meeting, and we'll let it go at that with respect to the criminal activity. But we'll continue to work with the county and these various task forces that have been set up that are staffed by some of the county people. The county, I know from visiting with Administrator Huff, spending an enormous amount of resources and money on juvenile crime. And so we need to, it would be good to maybe have somebody from the county here some time to have somebody make a presentation about the breadth of the work that's being done at the county level so that our residents know that there's a really strong effort being made to make sure that kids are held accountable, but also don't screw up their futures and have a chance to succeed. So, all right, is there a motion to adjourn the city council meeting? We'll step back into our role as HRA commissioners for 5 minutes when we get done with this meeting. Is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Member Pierce moves, Member Jackson seconds that we adjourn the meeting of the City Council of the City of Edina this 5th day of December 2023. All those in favor of adjournment say aye. Aye. Opposed? Carried. We stand adjourned. We'll be back.